Where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal opportunity lender, member FDIC, conditions apply.
Well, the country focused on the shootings in Dayton and El Paso on Saturday and Sunday. The city of Chicago recorded one of its more violent weekends recently.
Began Friday evening with the shooting of a 5-year-old boy, and by the time Monday morning rolled around, Chicago had recorded its most violent weekend of the year. 55 shootings, 7 of them fatal, and during one 2-hour stretch, 17 people were shot. In one of the shootings, a witness recorded the rapid gunfire on their cell phone. It lasted nearly a minute. So many ambulances flooded Chicago's Mount Sinai Hospital, they had to be turned away and sent to other trauma centers. So far this year, 1,600 people have been shot in Chicago, 300 of them fatally.
That's Fox's Trace Gallagher. There are new tensions brewing with China. Beijing warning it will not stand idly by if the U.S. deploys intermediate-range missiles in the Indo-Pacific region and will take countermeasures if that happens. U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper said in Asia over the weekend that he wants to deploy conventional mid-range missiles in the Asia-Pacific area within months. This as North Korea has launched 2 more missiles, which splashed down into the Sea of Japan. It is not your imagination. It really was hot last month.
Yeah, it's official. July was the hottest month ever recorded for the Earth. Global temperatures last month narrowly topping those of July of 2016 by 0.07 degrees, according to a European Climate Agency. Now, this news is not exactly a surprise. Climate experts predicted last week that July had a pretty good shot to be the hottest month of all time. But officials say it's significant because the previous hottest month happened during one of the strongest El Niños ever. This one occurred without the natural warming of the Pacific Ocean that boosts the average temperature of the Earth. John Saucier, Fox News.
Asian stocks are headed lower. Dow futures are actually trending more than 40 points higher after Monday's biggest loss by the Dow of the year. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Hafaday, this is Congressman Nicholas. Our office is currently visiting our villages, providing contact information for our office and taking any inquiries we may be of service with. All vehicles and staff are appropriately identified for your safety. Please feel free to let our constituent outreach team know how we can be of service to you, and thank you for your kindness.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
It's important to have claims process that works for you. At Guahan Insurance Services, we make things simple and convenient. Same door you walk in to purchase your insurance is the same door you open to file your claim. We can't pretend that the car insurance claims process is fun, but we can promise a hassle-free and speedy recovery without any runarounds. For your home, auto, and business insurance, visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center on Marine Corps Drive in Tamuning. Don't forget to like us on Facebook or give us a call at 475-1162 or text 929-SAVE. That's 929-7283.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. These are rough times, though, for Second Amendment folks with the goings-on in Dayton and El Paso. But we have to remember our message, and our message is this, that guns don't kill people, people kill people. So there'll be a lot of clamoring now for extremely stringent control over the law-abiding folks that own guns or want to buy guns, which means that we have to be as vigilant as ever, if not a little bit more so. So today I'm going to start out with believe it or not, from CNN. CNN did a pretty good workup on where we stand with the Second Amendment. And the title of the article is Where the Supreme Court Stands on the Second Amendment. And Here it goes. The country reels from 2 mass shootings. Supporters of gun restrictions are turning again to the debate over the scope of the Second Amendment, demanding that gun laws be strengthened. But it's unclear how Congress will act and also how the Supreme Court will react to any legislation or regulations from the federal or state governments. Since issuing the landmark opinions in 2002 guaranteeing an individual right to have a gun, and a follow-on opinion in 2010 applying that decision to the states, the Supreme Court has largely dodged petitions testing the scope of the holding. That prompted Justice Clarence Thomas to lash out in 2018, complaining that lower courts were treating the Second Amendment right cavalierly. But next term, the court will take up a Second Amendment case concerning a New York City ordinance, which we've discussed several times here on Tall Tales. A New York City ordinance that limits where licensed individuals can take their guns. And according to the New York City ordinance, here's where you can take your gun if you have one in New York. You could keep it at your house, and here's where you can take it. Nowhere. Basically, you could take it to 6 licensed gun clubs in the city of New York, and that's it. The courts move so soon after the retirement of Justice Anthony Kennedy prompted court watchers, I'm one of those, I'm a court watcher, to speculate that the addition of Justice Brett Kavanaugh, the court might be ready to take a more expansive view of the Second Amendment. In District of Columbia versus Heller, Justice Antonin Scalia wrote for a 5-4 court that Washington's ban on handgun possession in the home violates the Second Amendment. Supporters of the landmark opinion believe that gun restrictions across the country would be cut back in the aftermath. But many lower courts seized upon words in the opinion where Scalia wrote, and if you've been listening to Tall Tales for a while, you'll know that I've been unmercifully critical of Mr. Justice Antonin Scalia. May he rest in peace. But here's one of the reasons. Mr. Justice Antonin Scalia wrote, like most rights, the right secured by the Second Amendment is not unlimited to uphold restrictions. Until his death last month, retired Justice John Paul Stevenson, who wrote a stinging dissent in 2008, criticized Heller, writing in his book, The Making of Justice, that it was unquestionably the most clearly incorrect that the court announced during my tenure on the bench. That's what Stevens said. Next, Kavanaugh's impact. Now Kennedy is no longer on the bench, having been replaced by Kavanaugh, who received the endorsement of the National Rifle Association last year, and he was confirmed anyhow. President Trump has made another outstanding choice in nominating Brett Kavanaugh for the court, said then NRA Executive Director Chris Cox. He has an impressive record that demonstrates his strong support of the Second Amendment. Yeah, Marcus, let me finish up here on this piece on the Second Amendment, and then I'll get to you, okay? Kavanaugh testified at his Senate confirmation hearing that he based his opinion on the Heller decision. Now, going back just a second, Kavanaugh wrote that D.C.'s ban on semi-automatic rifles and gun registration requirement are unconstitutional and may not be enforced. This was before he was on the U.S. Supreme Court. Some court watchers question whether one reason the Supreme Court has been slow to take on additional cases after Heller was because it was unclear how Kennedy would vote. Others dismissed the notion, suggesting that after Heller, the court may have wanted the issue to percolate more in the lower courts. They contend that the court may have moved to take up the new case because the law at issue was an outlier. Well, let's hope it was an outlier, because it really took the words bear arms out of the Second Amendment. If you could keep a gun at your house, but you can't take it anywhere to but one of 5 firing ranges in the city of New York, and that's it, you really don't have a right to bear arms. And I've talked about this before. The city of New York is trying to moot out that case by repealing that restrictive amendment. It's going to be interesting to see whether it actually gets to the court, because if it does, I looked in my crystal ball, and the Supreme Court is really going to expand on Heller and McDonald and say not only can you keep a firearm, but you can bear it in public, with a few howevers after the words public. And that's why the liberals in New York don't want to see the Supreme Court decide this. The case the Supreme Court is set to hear next term concerns a provision of New York City law that regulates where licensed handgun owners can take their firearms. The law blocks licensed individuals from removing a handgun from the address listed on the license, except to travel to nearby small arms ranges or shooting clubs. The challenge comes from the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association. In court papers, their lawyers argued that a New Yorker cannot transport his handgun to his second home for the constitutional purposes of self-defense, or to an upstate county to participate in a shooting competition, or even across the bridge to a neighboring city for target practice, not to mention taking it over to his brother-in-law's house to brag. What kind of a law is that? Since the Supreme Court granted cert in the case, however, the law was changed. Lawyers for New York told justices in briefs they thought the case should be considered moot. There are some other cases, but even if it dismisses the New York case, there are other petitions waiting in the wings. Mance versus Barr, for instance, concerns the out-of-state handgun purchases. Pena versus Horn are you listening, Nate Horn? Pena versus Horn concerns California's Unsafe Handgun Act. Those cases and others have been distributed for conference, but not acted upon. Now, here's what that means. I've explained before that there is no more direct appeal from either a state Supreme Court or from one of the federal courts of appeals. In order to get to the Supreme Court, a litigant needs to file a petition for writ of certiorari. About 8,000 of those are submitted every year. Those petitions are circulated around amongst the justices, and mostly their clerks. And if 4 justices vote that they want to grant that petition, it gets on the Supreme Court calendar. That happens about 80 times each year. So when this article says those cases have been distributed for conference but not acted upon, that means that 4 justices have not come forward and said that they wanted to hear those cases. And here's another really important one. Last week, the Remington Arms Company asked the court to take up a lawsuit next term brought by a survivor and families of 9 other victims of the Sandy Hook Elementary School tragedy in 2012, who argued the gun manufacturer should be held partly responsible for the mass shooting. A 2005 federal law protects many gun manufacturers from wrongful death lawsuits brought by grieving family members. But the Sandy Hook plaintiffs are seeking a way around the law by targeting the company's marketing strategy. While the state Supreme Court ruled the case could move forward, it agreed to put its ruling on hold pending appeals. So in that case, the argument was that, yes, this federal law protects gun manufacturers from product liability suits. That's not what this suit is about. They said, what we're saying is that the way these firearms were marketed, appealing to young, reckless people who would buy these guns and do bad things with them. That's why we're coming to the Supreme Court. And at the time that I discussed this a couple of times on Tall Tales, and I pointed out that that's the reason that when I mention the Second Amendment, I so often mention that it is one of 10. And we have to protect them all to protect each one of them because, as in this case, you can see the impact of the Second Amendment and those who don't like it on the First Amendment. Anyhow, that's today's Second Amendment workup.
I think they have a pretty weak argument anyway, Brother Bob, because we all know older people are crazier than younger people.
Well...
Get off my lawn.
You know, I've often said that the reason that we want young folks to enlist in the armed forces is because before you're 22, 23, 24 years old, your brain housing group hasn't matured to the point that you've discarded this almost crazy pursuit of risk without understanding what the consequences are.
Yeah, those were the days.
Yeah, now when you get to be old, it's exactly the opposite. You wonder...
Now you look both ways before crossing the street.
Well, you wonder, do I really have to cross this street?
That's right, yeah.
If I wait here long enough, won't that taco come over here?
That's right.
Yeah. But interesting point, Michael. Okay, let's see what Marcus has got to say about the Second Amendment. Go ahead, Marcus.
Half a day. Yeah, just two things that are relevant to the Second Amendment. First one is China, and the other is mental health. And on China, unfortunately today they're experiencing a lot of upheaval and stuff, but they're a great and ancient culture of over 3,000, 4,000 years. But sometime after World War II, the communists took over and the socialists, and to the point where even Google bows down to China and is their number one search engine, but actually monitors and filters information for the Chinese government. And that's unfortunate because the people have no voice then. And if Democrats, socialists, or whoever is running the country now in the United States take over, they're so desperate they would probably try not only a coup d'etat, but a military takeover or something, you know. And that's why we need those guns in the hands of private citizens.
As far as Hong Kong is concerned, Marquez, is there any truth to the rumor that Bernie Sanders, being a card-carrying socialist, is going to go to Hong Kong and mediate the dispute?
I've not heard of that.
Yeah, well, then maybe I better quit spreading the rumor, right? Right, Marcus? Maybe I better quit spreading that rumor. But
yeah, right.
all of these neo-socialists ought to take a field trip to Hong Kong and kind of check it out and see how it works for them.
Right, and see how gentle and kind and wonderful socialism is.
Right.
Yeah. And then the second, you know, it's not guns that kill people, and it's not necessarily mentally ill people. I mean, there's supposedly straight people, regular, normal people that kill a lot of people. And but I did post something recently. It's called Off the Direct. The direct is a Hebrew word for the way or the path. And it's a euphemism for people who left the Orthodox way of Judaism and stuff. But it actually now is kind of a double entendre, and it refers to mentally ill people and stuff. And basically what it's talking about is there's enough talk about talking about mental illness and less work towards helping the mentally ill. We have a homeless situation on Guam. We have drug problems on Guam. We have a lot of issues on Guam that are behavioral health related. And we're doing a lot of talk about it, but we're not doing a lot of walk about it or talk, working about it so that we can help these people who are struggling.
I wonder, Marcus, I wonder if behavior is even something that anyone thinks about anymore. And I'll give you an example. Believe it or not, I was young once. I know that kind of stretches credulity, but I was. And when I was a kid, if I was doing something that seemed a little out of line, my mother or my father would say, "Bobby, behave yourself." And they didn't need to spell it out for me what they meant by behave yourself. But nowadays, you know, the most bizarre behavior is not only tolerated, but celebrated. So it seems that anyone who would attempt to behave, I was about to say, I almost did it again, any person who would seek to behave themselves would be seen as some kind of an oddball.
They self.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't use I gotta get a bar of soap in here and keep it handy. So every time I say him or her or his or
I'm wondering,
I should wash my mouth out with soap.
After the Cold War ended, that socialists and communism, actually during that whole period too, has been trying to mill its way in to our schools, our universities, our societal.
Well, you know, Marcus, I've talked about this more than once, and there are two key words, two key phrases: the Frankfurt School and neo-Marxism. Frankfurt School came along in the early 20s and saw that Marx had made a mistake because Marx thought we would have a revolution of the workers. Workers of the world unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains.
Right.
But when these guys at the Frankfurt School, a bunch of philosophers, saw that in World War I, German workers and French workers had no problem whatsoever killing one another, they decided this isn't going to work very well. So they came up with neo-Marxism or cultural Marxism, and they decided that the way for communism to succeed was to infiltrate all of our institutions, primarily education, primarily higher education.
They've done a bang-up job doing it.
They really have. They've been very successful.
Unfortunately. And we have now a society that identity politics is the norm, and the groupthink or culture or social decency or chivalry and all those other things are bad and pious and, I don't know, white supremacist or something. It's just messed up.
Yeah, and that's where it came from. So that's what happened to communism. You know, it started out. It's a screwy theory to start with, contrary to human nature. The initial theory didn't work, so this group of philosophers got together and came up with a new way of doing it. And some of the names that were part of the Frankfurt School became famous in the 60s. The one that I remember is a guy named Herbert Marcuse, who was one of the gurus in the 1960s of the new way of going about things. Classic neo-Marxist.
Wow. Yeah. Well, it failed, and it's still failing, but they're trying to succeed. And if we don't get more active and get more involved and educated, I mean, what we've been experiencing for the last 40 years, 30 years hasn't been the best of what we could be. And it's because we're trying to be something, I don't know, something that's godless.
Well, the idea, of course, for a communist, you got to get God out of the equation right away. According to Marx, religion is the opiate of the people.
Yeah,
so, you destroy all of the institutions, some of the historical memories, the institutions, religion, etc., because if people don't realize how bad they have it, which they don't, they're not going to be ready to give up what they've got to move into a socialist utopia. That's where we're heading. So, Marcus, I got our Tom hanging on the line here, so
Okay, yes, sir.
Thanks a lot for calling in, okay?
Yes, sir. Have a good one.
Thanks. And our Tom wants to talk about the shootings. So go for it, our Tom.
You know, what's his name? All your friends, the Democrats, are blaming Trump on all of these shootings.
Yep.
Right?
That's absolutely correct.
Especially your best friend, O'Rourke. He's the first one to do it.
Yeah. Beto.
But anyway, don't they realize that it is the hand behind that gun that's pulling the trigger? If supposing they eliminate all the guns out of this whole earth, for example, and then people start using kitchen knives to kill one another, are they going to now ban kitchen knives?
Yep.
They're all weapons. What, I don't know why they just cannot identify these individuals that are prone to commit these crimes, you know?
Well, as our Carl points out, so often the issue is not the issue. The issue is the revolution. So this is another example of destroying all of our institutions to try to take us down that path to utopia. Because in utopia, you wouldn't need a gun. You know, the government would be so clean and so good and so efficient that no one would need a gun. So let's get rid of them now.
And then they made a mistake. I think California is the state that did it, but they made a mistake of grandfathering the AR-15. When they eliminated it, they made a law to eliminate assault weapons, right? But they grandfathered the assault weapon. That means, you know, people that already had it don't have to turn it in. They can just keep it.
Well, you know, when you get into that, that's another old story. The AR-15 is a semi-automatic rifle. Probably not a whole lot. It has a different shape, but it's a semi-automatic rifle, just like the semi-automatic rifle that Uncle Herman used to take up to northern Wisconsin to go deer hunting. Semi-automatic is semi-automatic. Doesn't matter what it looks like, but the Democrats have seized upon something that they think is a winning argument. So, you know, we got to ban assault rifles. And they want you to think that there's no difference between an AR-15 and an M16. An M16 is an automatic weapon. In other words, you pull the trigger and rat-a-tat-tat-tat. But with an AR-15, it's bang, bang, bang.
Yeah, one shot and one bullet.
Every time you pull the trigger, etc. So, again, it's just an attempt to fool us all with this assault weapon stuff.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem is that we, the people, somehow, it seems like we encourage this kind of shootings because, and the reason why I say that is that we allow the Hollywood people, the people that make films and movies, to have movies like The Walking Dead, where they're blowing the heads out of people and they want to see those blood splatter all over the place. And we're allowing children to watch those movies. And then when it comes Halloween time, some parents will let their children walk around trick-or-treating with that white mask. What is that? That murderer?
Freddy Krueger?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The children are allowed to walk around with a Freddy Krueger mask. It seems like they're honoring the murderers.
Well, you know, when it comes to Hollywood, Tom, there are a couple of things that to me are indicators that I'm probably not going to pay much. I'm probably not going to trust much of what they say. One is people who can't get their own names right, like Robert Mueller, whose name is really Mueller. And the other one is the Hollywood types who are foreign policy experts, social policy experts, tax experts, etc., but they make their living pretending to be somebody else. So how much credibility can we give them? Unfortunately, more people, believe it or not, more people go to the movies than listen to tall tales. It shouldn't be that way. But it is. So the movies probably have a greater influence on the mass population than Tall Tales does. And I don't know how we're going to, I'm going to keep trying to fix that, but until we can, I don't know what's going to happen.
And then we, what was that we're trying to say? Somehow we got rid of those family-oriented movies like, Little House on the Prairie, Highway to Heaven, etc., right? And then we start bringing in all these gun shooting kind of movies, and the children are watching them, and then they have these video games now, where you play shootout.
Yeah, you see how many people you can kill.
Yeah, it's really crazy.
It is, Tom.
Okay, Bob, thanks for letting me,
We always look forward to calls from our Tom. And is the Tom line open now, Michael? Yeah, okay, so that's the first Tom. We got a couple more Toms that I noticed Tom Van Engen's on Facebook, so thanks for calling, Tom.
All right, Bob.
Maybe we can work some animals in here somewhere so we could get Tom Poole to give us a buzz. Okay, let's see here. I think I'm hearing rock around the clock bumper music here, so I guess I better take a short break. Be right back.
Parents, start your child's school year right with healthiness and fun. Complete your child's immunizations, annual physical, dental, or eye exam at FHP and receive a free gift for each exam visit. Perfect for back to school. Valid from July 15 to August 31st or while supplies last. Visit their website or Facebook page for more details. Call 646-5825 and press 2 to schedule an appointment today. Most private insurance accepted. FHP Health Center, our island, your clinic.
Hi, welcome to this Subway ad for the new ciabatta collection. How do you want it?
I'll take the slam poultry.
Sure. Italian ciabatta with mozzarella. When hunger reigns, you're my favorite umbrella. Tasty garlic steak and provolone. With you, my taste buds are never alone. Savory chicken pesto, you have my affection. For you complete the ciabatta collection. Thank you. That was the new ciabatta collection by Subway. Limited time only at participating restaurants.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, so here we are back at Tall Tales again. We finished up our Second Amendment. We've had a couple obligatory calls from Marcus and our Tom. And let's go from there straight to Zemi Ikotny. So here we are, Zemi Ikotny. I'm looking around here for my, here it is. Here's my blue pencil. I want you to stay tuned to the end of the program today so that you'll see why I will not be waving this blue pencil at you tomorrow. So that's all I'm going to say, but I suspect that everybody who gets tuned in here stays till the bitter end. Should I say bitter end? Till the very end anyhow, but that's a good reason to do it today. So I go through the editorials. I look for usage and grammatical mistakes. I look for the soundness of the theories advanced. I'm checking for factual accuracy. readability is extremely important. Grabbing an issue that's important is a must. If the editors have only exercised their fingers to put marks on paper that don't really have any impact, they're not going to get very far in Zemi and Kutney. And, of course, the Daily News most of the time doesn't even try. Today is no exception. Today, the editorial comes from Catherine Archuleta, a founding partner at Dimensions Strategies and the director of the Office of Personnel Management under President Barack Obama. So you can kind of imagine what Catherine's going to have to say. So standard stuff, USA Today, far left, bashing Trump. What else is new? I'll read the title to you, and you probably, if you're really curious, you could read the whole thing. But I suspect that this lead-in tells you everything you need to know about this editorial. Here it is. Trump plan on LGBTQ health is cruel and dangerous. Yeah. So, you know, if you gotta run their stuff, can't you be a little selective? We know you don't. We know that you hate Trump. You don't have to keep doing that. We know that you're out on the far left. You don't have to keep emphasizing that. And by now, you ought to figure out that you're not making inroads into anyone's thought process, except perhaps the company that bought you out. Breaking news: a company called Gatehouse Media bought 100% of the shares of Gannett.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
Yesterday.
The mighty Gannett.
The mighty Gannett has been sucked up by a company called Gatehouse Media, which is even bigger than Gannett. So I don't have, I'm not holding out much hope. I think the only thing that's going to save the Daily News is if some folks here on the island can scrape together enough money to put Gannett out of its misery and take over the presses and the staff, et cetera, and start printing a real newspaper. I know that's asking for a lot. Talking about real newspapers, I have the Post right here in front of me. And the Post is not really hard-hitting today. They touch on something that's important, but not their usual hard-hitting editorial. Inadequate busing and bus stops don't keep safety, welfare of our students top of mind. With Guam's public schools reopening for a new school year a week from now, students and their families enter a new chapter of worries and struggles if they don't have the means to transport their children between home and school. The busing schedule remains largely unchanged, so many of our thousands of students will be standing in bus shelters even before the sun rises to catch the early bus schedule. It kind of reminds me of my school days. You know, when I was in kindergarten, Michael, it was 1943.
Yeah.
The country was in the midst of World War II, and during the entirety of World War II, the whole country was on daylight savings time.
Wow.
Yeah. So all the clocks in December were advanced. I mean, all year round were advanced an hour. Mm-hmm. So I was in morning kindergarten. We lived about 0.9 miles from school. Yeah. And I would get up and stumble off to kindergarten in the dark.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, if a parent tried to do that today, they'd lock that parent up so tight that you'd have to pipe sunlight to them, you know?
Oh,
yeah, but that was kind of the norm back in those days. Sometimes when I tell the story, I mention that it was uphill to school.
Yeah, both ways.
Both ways, right. Okay, so anyhow, the busing schedule remains unchanged, so many of our thousands of students will be standing in bus shelters even before the sun rises. When it rains, they'll get soaked. And without significant construction of bus shelters in recent years, some of our school children will be waiting on roadsides, many without guardrails to protect against speeding cars and exposed to the elements. Before the school year begins, the odds of public school children from poor families succeeding are already stacked up against them. With many families unable to afford a reliable car or spend more for gasoline, vehicle maintenance, and upkeep, some students will be faced with an enormous toll on their mind and body just to get a bus ride to school. By the time school starts, students from families in poverty will already be fighting exhaustion. Many teachers have said before that the struggle for some of our students begins at home, where living conditions are substandard and they don't get to eat breakfast until they arrive in school where it's free. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. That's what I learned when I was in school.
Mm-hmm.
While some students from more stable households will be able to be well on their way to preparing in class, other students in less economically fortunate homes will be hopping off buses and rushing to get breakfast in the school cafeteria. And that's assuming the buses are running on schedule. Turning the page. Our elected officials must prioritize the need for an adequate number of school buses and drivers, a sensible busing schedule that's centered around the needs of the students rather than the government's shortcomings, and bus shelters to keep them safe. It's also equally important to keep public policies focused on better path for the adults in the students' households to get jobs or better paying jobs. It sounds like a lot to ask, but the results could really change our community for the better. Well, okay, I can't say there's anything that I disagree with in this editorial, but there's nothing that is going to send me out to storm the barricades either. So no Blue Star today. At least Guam Daily Post, you tried. You had your own editorial here. Okay, so from there, we go to the card. And the first item on the card is Trump versus white supremacy. Yeah. And if you haven't heard Donald Trump's speech, I'll just kind of summarize it here. Here's what Trump said. In one voice, our nation must condemn racism, bigotry, and white supremacy. These sinister ideologies must be defeated. Hate has no place in America. Hatred warps the mind, ravages the heart, and devours the soul. The president called for federal and local enforcement to help identify ways to prevent hate crimes and domestic terrorism in the United States. This is a little bit of a departure for Trump. Trump spoke to the nation from the White House in response to 2 mass shootings that took place over the weekend. 20 people were killed in El Paso on Saturday, and 10 were killed in the shooting in Dayton. These barbaric slaughters are an assault on our communities, an attack on our nation, and a crime against all humanity. We're sickened by this monstrous evil, the cruelty, the hatred, the malice, the bloodshed, and the terror. Trump described the Texas shooting suspect as a wicked man who shot innocent people, and the Ohio shooter as a twisted monster. The First Lady and I join all Americans praying and grieving for all the victims. The president signals support for stronger laws regulating the internet, social media, and violent video games, supported the concept of improved mental health and the, quote, red flag laws allowing relatives to recommend court-ordered seizures. He called for bipartisan solutions that worked and did not mention the ban of any types of firearms. Mental illness and hatred pulled the trigger, not the gun, Trump said. Let's see. The president noted that internet and social media were responsible for helping radicalize mass shooters. We must recognize that the internet has provided a dangerous avenue to radicalize disturbed minds and perform demented acts. We must shine a light on the dark recesses of the internet and stop mass murders before they start. Well, I think he's got a point there. You know, I don't spend a whole lot of time on, I don't spend any time on Facebook except right here on Tall Tales.
Right.
But I know I hear other people talk about the chat rooms, Tall Tales, Instagram, etc. And it's there is a dimension here that is something we've never experienced before. If I had some really wild idea and I were to walk out here and there are 3 or 4 people out in the office and I express those ideas, I would know just by the look on their face, the way they acted, etc., that maybe this wasn't a really good idea. But when all you're doing is pounding a keyboard and looking at a screen and kind of having a contest with other people to see who could be the most radical or the most far out or the most disgusting or whatever, there's a tendency for these things to go somewhere where they would never go if the people were dealing with one another on a face-to-face basis. Now, I don't know if my theory is correct. I'd be surprised if it isn't. It'd probably be close to the first time that it wasn't. But I don't have any way of dealing with that. Regulating the internet, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like it would be the way to go. Video games. I never did much with video games until I was at somebody's house where one of the kids had video games, and I tried it a little bit, and it's brutal.
Yeah.
Because you score points by killing people on the screen. Now, I've looked at enough screens, and I've been around long enough to know that there's a huge difference between what happened in these games and the real world. But when people are in their early teens, these are distinctions that are hard for them to make.
Yeah, it desensitizes them to the thing.
It does. So they get used to it. They think, oh, yeah, I pull this trigger and all these things happen and it's cool. And I don't know. Again, should we outlaw video games? Should we have age restrictions for video games?
We already do in a lot of ways. There are already a lot of restrictions on video games, much like the movies and entertainment.
Yeah. Well, okay. I'd like to tell you that I know exactly how to solve these problems, but even I don't have the solutions. Just gives you some idea of the magnitude of these problems. We must recognize that the internet has provided a dangerous avenue to radicalize disturbed minds and perform demented acts, Trump said. Trump blamed violent and gruesome and grisly video games for contributing to the shootings. It's too easy today for troubled youth to surround themselves with a culture that celebrates violence. We must stop or substantially reduce this, and it has to begin immediately. How it's going to happen? It's a really good question. So Trump says the right thing. He's also in favor of so-called red flag laws, and what that means is that there would be judicial procedures to deal with people who seem to be acting in a manner that suggests that they could be dangerous. Take their guns away from them, perhaps restrict their liberty, etc. It sounds like a good idea, but the old saying is the devil is in the details. And I can see a tremendous potential for abuse there. I'm going to come back to this in about a few minutes here, and I'm going to talk to you about how Pocahontas is reacting to the whole crisis in El Paso and Toledo. I won't give you the whole story, but I'll give you a tip. Pocahontas' reaction is wampum. So let's try Dave Brubeck's Take 5 this time, Michael.
We understand what matters to you because at Docomo Pacific, we're a family too. With the Now Family program, mom, dad, and kids stay connected on the latest devices the whole family can enjoy. For just $155 a month, get 3 lines with 30 gigs of 4G LTE data each, and endless use of your favorite apps without affecting your monthly data bucket. Add more, get more, save more. Docomo Pacific, better together. Some conditions apply.
Here at APL, our core values give the company its heart and soul. Whether it's connecting your business with our global network through our newly enhanced service or investing our efforts into giving back to the community, APL is committed to serving you. We humbly honor the opportunity to find innovative solutions for you and your business. To learn more about our enhanced service, call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com/Guam for more details.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
So here we are back again, and I should give you a little preview of what the card holds for today, I guess. We did Trump versus white supremacy. Next up is Pocahontas versus Wampum. Next is Josh and Janella versus John Fernandez, a holdover from yesterday. And then our Ethics Commission versus Francis Areola. Then the Chamorro Independence Commission versus Decolonization. Moylan versus the Democrats. Governor Leon Guerrero versus Governor Leon Guerrero. Regular listeners to the point know that we have 2 governors Leon Guerrero, one of whom calls Ray's show a lot, calls Tall Tales occasionally. The other one never calls, if that helps you distinguish your Governor Leon Guerreros. Then I've got a squad report about the squad. Nothing from our squad, but I think that perhaps in the next few days we're going to hear a lot out of our squad when the word gets out that there's a possibility that the United States might consider placing medium-range missiles on Guam. Now that we have gotten out of the treaty dealing with missiles, now that treaty with Russia. So there may be some move to put medium-range missiles on Guam, which I'm sure our squad will react to violently. Then I've got the, let's see here. Yeah, and that's pretty much it, the squad report. Okay, so let's talk about Pocahontas versus Wampum. Democrats are fundraising off El Paso and Dayton shootings. I got this from Town Hall. Democrats are blaming President Trump's rhetoric for influencing the El Paso shooter and the anti-immigrant manifesto he penned before Saturday's massacre. But they seem to have no issue trying to fundraise off the tragedy, as well as Sunday morning's mass shootings in Dayton. Senator Elizabeth Warren said she's heartbroken about the shootings, which left 31 people dead, then asked for money for Senators Doug Jones and Tina Smith in their respective Senate campaigns. Here's a quote. "Yesterday we woke up to the second mass shooting in just as many days. I'm heartbroken for El Paso and Dayton and to all the families who have just endured the unimaginable loss. We need common sense gun reform now before the next mass shooting to stop the daily gun violence on our streets and to make sure that our families and loved ones are safe. But Mitch McConnell and the Republicans in the Senate are blocking legislation that could help address the epidemic. During the last election, we flipped the House, and in February, the Democratic-led House passed bipartisan legislation that would have a meaningful impact on this crisis. But 5 months after passing the House and more than 6.5 years after Sandy Hook, that bill is still sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk. It's inexcusable. It's clear Republicans don't have the courage to do something about this crisis. We can't wait for them to act because they won't. If we're going to address the gun violence epidemic in our country, we need to take back the Senate in 2020. I'll fight my heart out to make sure Democrats win up and down the ballot in 2020. But if we're going to beat Republicans and the gun lobby, it's going to take a grassroots movement. Will you chip in today to help Democrats flip the Senate? Your donation will be split among funds that will go to the eventual Democrat Senate nominees in 23 races and to Senators Doug Jones and Tina Smith. Great. And there's more here about Senator Kamala Harris attempting to do a little fundraising herself. She says, split a $10 donation between my organization dedicated to ending gun violence, Giffords PAC, and the Democrat National Committee today. Together we have power to prevent gun violence and save lives. These fundraising emails are in poor taste. Of course. In poor taste. And I guess it goes back to what Rahm Emanuel, who was President Obama's chief of staff, later on became mayor of Chicago. Rahm's advice is never let a crisis go to waste. And that's exactly what Elizabeth is doing. She's putting on her war paint. She's sending smoke signals about contributing wampum to her favorite causes, because actually what she'd really like to do is move into the white wigwam. So we're going to break here for our 1700 halftime show, 5 o'clock, big halftime show, marching bands, cheerleaders, etc. I'll be back in 5 or 6 minutes.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Missions of comfort. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. The White House says President Trump will travel tomorrow to both El Paso, Texas, and to Dayton, Ohio, in the aftermath of weekend mass shootings in both cities. Counselor to the president, Kellyanne Conway, telling Fox's The Story with Martha McCallum.
It was important for the president to speak, too, on behalf of a grieving nation that's in shock, but also to offer anger and sympathy and condolences, and to point out that he's directing his FBI and the Department of Justice to continue its work against domestic terrorism.
Despite political differences, El Paso's Mayor DeMargo says he will welcome the president.
That this is the office of the mayor of El Paso in an official capacity welcoming the office of the President of the United States, which I consider is my formal duty.
And Mayor Margo says he will ask the president to help in the city's recovery from the shootings that left 22 people dead. After hearing chants of do something at a vigil for the victims of the Dayton shootings, Ohio's Governor Mike DeWine says he will lay out a set of proposals today aimed at curbing gun violence and improving mental health awareness.
People who knew the Dayton killers say all the warning signs were there.
There was some instances of threats.
Theo Gainey, neighbor of the gunman's family, though nothing stopped him from legally obtaining the rifle and 100-round clips he used to slaughter innocent people, including the gunman's own sister.
We have a lot of evidence still to go through.
Police Chief Richard Beal being assisted by state and federal investigators,
which are expediting the transportation and analysis of digital evidence.
Searching through the gunman's past, computer, and phone history to try and find out why.
Fox's Jeff Manasso, and while most of America wasn't watching, 55 people were shot in Chicago over the weekend, 7 of them fatally. This is Fox News.
Hoffaday, this is Congressman Nicholas. Our office is currently visiting our villages, providing contact information for our office and taking any inquiries we may be of service with. All vehicles and staff are appropriately identified for your safety. Please feel free to let our constituent outreach team know how we can be of service to you, and thank you for your kindness.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with a true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine. A bistro look that feels like home. Their menu features local and traditional flavors with a twist. From their famous Calaguan Hafa to fresh ahi poke salad and their award-winning barbecue ribs. Mezcla takes your favorite local dishes and serves them with extra flair that you'll only find at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Stop by their newest location in the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon. For reservations, call 969-2652. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
At a time when the country really needs it, tonight is National Night Out.
For more than 3 decades, National Night Out has been billed as a program that builds communities. Starting in 1984, it grew out of a neighborhood watch effort in suburban Philadelphia and now serves, according to its website, 38 million neighbors in 16,000 communities on the first Tuesday in August. It encourages gatherings of the cops and citizens to get to know one another and build trust at block parties, picnics, and other social events. The main effort has always been to inform people about police programs. While most of the nation participates tonight, Texas observance will be on the first Tuesday in October. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
More legal troubles for singer R. Kelly. The district attorney in Hennepin County in Minnesota charging Kelly with soliciting an underage girl back in 2001.
Some might say, aren't you piling on? He's got federal charges in New York. He's got state charges in Cook County and elsewhere. Well, frankly, Minnesota victims deserve their day in court. And that's one of the reasons we're here.
That's DA Michael Freeman, an attorney for R. Kelly, says the new charges are beyond absurd. China's foreign ministry says they won't stand idly by if the U.S. places missiles in the Indo-Pacific region, which Defense Secretary Mark Esper said over the weekend could happen within months, Beijing vowing countermeasures. This as North Korea test fires 2 more missiles into the Sea of Japan. As trade tensions deepen between Washington and Beijing, China's currency, the yuan, has fallen further in Tuesday trading. The Trump administration charges China with currency manipulation to make the prices of its exports unfairly low. This as the president has threatened to hike tariffs on more Chinese imports. All of that pushed the Dow to its lowest loss of the year Monday, down 767 points. The Dow futures are now ahead nearly 90 points. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Whether it's for business or pleasure, staying connected when you travel is always essential. And now when you travel to South Korea, enjoy free data roaming with Docomo Pacific. Navigate the city, look up the best restaurants, email back home, or post all your pictures, all on the go for free. Call 688-2677 today to make sure your postpaid account is ready for roaming. You plus Docomo Pacific. Better together. Some conditions apply. See printout for details.
Parents, start your child's school year right with healthiness and fun. Complete your child's immunizations, annual physical, dental, or eye exam at FHP and receive a free gift for each exam visit. Perfect for back to school. Valid from July 15 to August 31st or while supplies last. Visit their website or Facebook page for more details. Call 646-5825 and press 2 to schedule an appointment today. Most private insurance accepted. FHP Health Center, our island, your clinic.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
You know, I hope the real Joe Cruz is somewhere where he can enjoy that halftime show every day.
He's tuned in every afternoon, Bob.
Yeah, I said I have a feeling he would never want to miss that halftime show.
No.
Yeah. Okay, so here we are back for the second half of Tall Tales, and I think I'll just cruise through the Facebook here to see who's here. I've got a Tom here. Tom Van Engen is here, and let's see. Teddo's here, and Nate horns in to say good afternoon. Good afternoon, Judge and real Joe Cruz. Whoa. What do you think of that, Michael?
I think Joe has just been insulted.
Okay. And then Nate Horn corrects himself and says, oops, Duke. And I've got Margaret Bloss, half a day, Senator, Judge, Professor Klitzkie, and Joe Cruz from Cypress, California. I'm back to my listening ears to Tall Tales before my bedtime. Good way to end the day, Margaret.
That's right.
Very good. And Nate horns in and says, it's not video games. I've been playing them for 20 years. No urge to kill anyone. Well, there's the magic sample of one. And let's see. Rianne Raisby, good afternoon. Ishmael says, seen at Payless Manamco carrying paper grocery bags from store to car in pouring rain. There goes the jar of coconut gel. Crash. Paper bags don't work so well in pouring rain.
They really don't, no.
But they're so much more politically correct.
They are, yes.
Than plastic bags.
Yeah. I guess we stopped caring about trees.
I guess, maybe the next thing, for a clever entrepreneur would be to make plastic bags that look like paper bags.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so you could carry your stuff around in a plastic bag.
But
yeah. Well, that's why you want to stay tuned to the end of the program today.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, well, let me pick it up here with Pocahontas versus Wampum. Or I guess I just finished Pocahontas versus Wampum, didn't I? All right, so let's see. Next item on the calendar here, on the card, it's Josh and Janela versus John Fernandez, but I think I'll skip over that for a moment and go to something else that I think needs to be thought about, and this is the Ethics Commission versus Francis Areola. This is a story from the Post. Port to pay mayor who was unqualified as accountant. No further appeal is left for the Port Authority, and General Rory Respicio said the port will follow the decision of the Supreme Court in the case of Kevin Suswico. It's a Supreme Court order, said Respicio. Not following a court order results in being held in contempt of court. And then the story goes into talking about how Suswico wasn't qualified for the position that he was hired for. The Civil Service Commission issued a decision in September 2012 findings that states, while reviewing the qualification determination sheet, employment application, and resume, it was found that the employee was awarded irrelevant work experience. So Kevin Suswico was hired even though he had irrelevant work experience. In fact, the employee possesses absolutely no creditable work experience associated with accounting and therefore should not have been qualified, the Civil Service Commission concluded. So, cutting to the chase here, this guy Suswico was hired even though the papers underlying his appointment showed not even close to being qualified. He was hired anyhow, and then the matter came before the Civil Service Commission on what they call their post-audit authority, which gives them the authority to set aside any personnel action that's not in accordance with the rules and statutes. So basically what they did was they voided Suswiko's appointment. It's not, they didn't fire him. They just said, your appointment to this job is void, so you don't work there anymore. But the port didn't handle it very well. They brought an adverse action against him. The adverse action was too late. And in my mind, the Supreme Court got confused between the forest and the trees here and said, well, you know, you missed the 60-day rule. So even though the guy never should have gotten the job in the first place, and even though he isn't qualified to do the job, we're going to reinstate him to the job that he should have never had and then pay him for the work that he never did. And it's no wonder that sometimes people get a little frustrated with the judiciary. Whereas the Supreme Court just could have gone right to the heart of the matter and said, 60-day rule is irrelevant. This guy's appointment was voided, and everything that happened after that is interesting but irrelevant.
Yeah, technically, he was never an employee.
So we've talked about this before, but the reason I bring this up is that, you know, the papers underlying Suswiko's initial employment, you know, weren't even close. And then the article goes on to say the port manager who evaluated Suswiko for the accounting job, Francis Areola, gave Suswiko 12 years of credible work experience for various jobs not directly related to accounting, personnel records show. Suswiko's past jobs included having been an account manager for a logistics account company and a manager at his family's Familia Cafe, and as an employee handling customer accounts at 3 phone companies on Guam. Suswiko indicated in his application he had a 2-year associate's degree in marketing, but did not provide a transcript, the commission report found. So, you know, just from this article here, you can see that the papers that this guy handed in to the Port Authority of Guam to get this job weren't even close, yet he was hired anyhow. And now, because of a series of screw-ups, it's going to cost us thousands of dollars to pay this guy for work that he never did. And it seems to, according to this article, it seems to all come back to Francis Areola, who was one of the Port 7, by the way. So if this is the case, then we have an ethics commission. And if we made some assumptions, let's assume that this guy was not qualified for the job, but Areola checked the necessary boxes and signed the necessary papers so that he could be hired. Would this be a breach of ethics? Seems like it to me. So what will we do about something like this? Well, our ethics commission reads the paper. They can act sua sponte. They don't need to have somebody sign a piece of paper in blood making the complaint. They can just act on whatever comes before them, whatever they're aware of. So our ethics commission will jump right in and do a complete investigation here and determine whether or not Francis Areola, in processing Suswiko for this job, committed an ethics violation, right? Wrong. At least so far, the Ethics Commission has done absolutely nothing. And I pointed this out yesterday. The members are Dr. Robert Jack, an ophthalmologist, Shannon Murphy, a former journalist, Meg Taekwenko, president of Energetic President and retired manager of Xerox Corporation, Donalyn Camacho, a certified fraud examiner and board designated Bank Secrecy Act officer for ANZ, Australia New Zealand Bank. Seemed like a pretty high-powered guy for this kind of work. And Marilyn Roberto, vice president of enterprise sales at Docomo. So what have they done so far? They've had their picture taken with Governor Lulian Guerrero, and that's it. And that was way back in June. So What are you waiting for, Ethics Commission? You waiting for someone to come along and tell you what to do? Have you read your organic statute? Are you aware of what's going on? Or are you content to having had your picture in the paper with the governor, and now you can add to your resume, member, Guam Ethics Commission, etc. People will see that and they say, whoa, that's the kind of person we need here, is someone who's been on that Ethics Commission. And I pointed out, so far, this has been very successful for the governor, and I'll go through it again. Very successful for the governor because she got some earned media out of it. She got her picture in the newspaper with 5 good citizens, 5 upstanding citizens. She has bragging rights. When she runs for re-election, she'll say, no governor ever appointed members to the Ethics Commission, and I did. We had a full Ethics Commission, and there were never any ethical violations in my administration, or anywhere else for that matter. So this has been, politically, this has been very successful for Governor Lulian Guerrero. It hasn't done squat for the people, but since when was that ever important? Okay, next item on the calendar here is Chamorro Independence Commission versus decolonization. This is an article I got from the Daily News. Governor and the Attorney General to discuss next step for decolonization. Yesterday I read the public notice for the meeting of the Decolonization Commission. There's another article in here from PNC. The Commission on Decolonization will host its regular monthly meeting on August 6th, and a discussion of the recent Dave Davis ruling is high up on the agenda. In light of the recent ruling from the Ninth Circuit, Governor Leon Guerrero and Attorney General Levin Camacho will be present to address the commission board. PNC, no. Some organizations have boards of directors, some have commissions. If it's a commission, then the members are called commissioners. If it's a board, the board members are called board members or directors. But there's no such thing as a commission board. Well, it's a good thing you're not writing editorials, or you'd get the blue pencil on this one. Okay. And then the other article lists a summary of key events related to the failed plebiscite during the past 2 decades. August 1977, the newly appointed Commission on Decolonization. Now, I want to stop here. You know, if you're going to have a meeting on tomorrow, or today, at 3, as a matter of fact, the meeting's probably over by now.
Yeah.
Okay, well, my bad.
Refreshments.
I should have got here early. I should have told you earlier. Yeah. The first thing you want to do is you want to be honest with the people and come clean and tell them that your commission is not about decolonization. And everything that you do makes that clear. You don't talk about decolonization. You talk about Chamorro self-determination, as though the 2 phrases are synonymous. Decolonization is not synonymous with Chamorro self-determination. Guam is a colony, and as you're so fond of, you guys over at the Chamorro Independence Commission are so fond of reminding us, the United States put Guam on the list of non-self-governing territories. It never put Chamorros on the list. It put Guam. So the idea is the United States promised that it would decolonize Guam. And Guam is an island. It's a political entity called the Territory of Guam. People live on Guam. Some of the people who live on Guam are called Chamorros. Not all of the people who live on Guam are called Chamorros. But everyone who lives here lives in a colony. regardless of whether you're Chamorro or not, you live in a colony, and you are subject to the same disabilities as anyone else who lives here. And I've explained this before, that living on Guam, your political rights, your civil rights, are primarily matters of national citizenship. Your political rights are matters of state citizenship. You read the Constitution, all the political rights are matters of state citizenship. Guam's not a state, therefore people living in Guam don't have the same political rights as people living in one of the states. Same civil rights, however, freedom of speech, Second Amendment, on and on, like that. But if Guam is to be decolonized, then we can't say, well, what we're interested in is Chamorro self-determination. I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it ain't decolonization. So you need to be honest with the people, because if you're going to be successful with Chamorro self-determination, you're going to need at least the acquiescence of an awful lot of other people that live on the island that are not Chamorro. And you're probably not going to get, at the bare minimum, acquiescence if you're not honest with them. And you're not being honest with them, calling this commission a decolonization commission. Fact is that the government of Guam has never taken step one towards decolonizing Guam. And, of course, I've pointed this out before, the government of Guam is the colonizer's government. The colonizer established this government. It's an act created by an act of the United States Congress. So if you are the governor of Guam or a senator or the president of the university or whatever, you are actively engaged in the colonizer's government. Of course, the beauty of that is that you draw a paycheck. So this is my analysis here. This commission, the so-called Commission of Chamorro Self-Determination, is really just the Chamorro Independence Commission, because clever people were able to manipulate the focal point here to three things, two of which are not possible. One of the options is supposed to be free association, which is an impossibility. The United States can't freely associate with Guam because Guam is a territory of the United States. The United States, Article 4, Section 3, would not allow the United States to enter into any kind of an agreement with free association with its own territory. In order for that to happen, Guam would have to become an independent entity. So once it's independent, it's independent. So free association, bogus. Independence. Does the United States Congress have the power to create an independent Guam? It certainly does. Article 4, Section 3 of the United States Constitution, which I happen to have right in front of me here, says that the Congress shall have the power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory of the United States. So if the United States wanted to dispose of the territory of Guam, a simple act of Congress signed by the President, the territory of Guam henceforth is no longer part of American sovereignty. It is, the United States will exercise no sovereignty over that territory in the future. Boom, it's done. The United States took the Philippines in 1898, 1946, created an independent Philippine Republic. So that's possible. The third option is statehood, and I've explained many times why that's a will-o'-the-wisp. With 160,000 people here, and the next, the smallest state, approximately 700,000 people, the idea that the states in Congress are going to vote to dilute their own representation and give equal representation to such a small number of people, it's not going to happen. And I don't know that it's possible that Guam would ever be able to have enough people to get up to that threshold number. I certainly don't think we'd even want to try. Can you imagine what Guam would be like with 700,000 people living on it? Some say, well, we could unite with the Northern Marianas. Even if we did, you wouldn't have the numbers, and I think it'd probably be impossible to unite with the Northern Marianas now after we've gone our own separate ways for so long. So statehood is a deception plan to say, well, it's either statehood or free association or independence, because independence is the only one that's theoretically or practically possible. So this whole decolonization commission is just a mechanism to push the decolonization agenda. Listen to the remarks of the executive director of the decolonization commission. I've never heard him use the word state. I've heard him use the word sovereignty over and over again. And of course, the only way you get sovereignty is by being independent. So this is a really clever dodge, because by maintaining this fiction, the three alternatives fiction, the decolonization fiction, the ones who really want independence can stay on the government payroll while they're doing their propagandizing. In fact, with the commission, they can even use an element of the colonizers' government to put forth their own propaganda. They're talking about an education campaign. I don't think so. So that's where we are. So what you should have done at your meeting today, you should have come clean and been honest with the people as to what it is that you really are and what it is that you really want to do. And then ask yourself, do we really need a decolonization commission? And my answer to that question is, since there's not going to be a plebiscite anymore, what purpose does it serve other than promulgating the propaganda of the independentistas? Now, turning to another tack here, let's talk about the Davis case. I'll talk a little bit about the Davis case. Got the 7th inning stretch coming up right now, right?
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959, and they'll continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer vacation or paying off those long overdue bills, Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $3,600 by calling Family Finance in Hagåtña at 475-4545, Upper Tumon at 647-5626, or in Dededo, 633-4473. Family Finance, serving the people of Guam since 1959.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Somebody once told me that if I wanted to be a leader, one skill I would need is the ability to ask great questions. I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, we'll have a few you can use in your trip toward better leadership.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, inviting you to try their garlic roasted Dungeness crab, featuring 2 pounds of Dungeness crab marinated with a secret garlic sauce and served with special chow mein noodles. Visit Mezcla in Hagåtña and now in Tumon at the Grand Plaza Hotel. For reservations, please call 969-2652.
Here we are, center field bleachers, Wrigley Field in Chicago. Nice sunny day here in Chicago, unlike a rainy Guam that we've been used to here. By the way, Mr. Duke Sky Talker, what can you tell us about the rain other than it makes us get wet?
Yeah, it's just pretty much going to keep doing it right on through the end of the week. We do have a developing tropical system north of us. It's Tropical Depression 11W. Now, what happens is as these things strengthen, of course, they draw inward. And so right now, depending on how strong it gets, it could draw some of this energy and moisture into it as it moves away. And ultimately, it will be pulling the monsoon and everything else with it when it does move. It's just a matter of how fast that is. That's the big question.
I got it. Well, you know the old saying, "'Tis an ill wind that blows no one good."
That's right. Yeah.
I really enjoy the mornings. I sit out on my front porch listening to the Ray Gibson show, drinking coffee. It was like 72 degrees out there this morning.
No, really good. No, nice rain.
Yeah.
Rain, cooled air, a little breeze. It's good
Beautiful.
stuff. Yeah.
So you could keep it up for a while if you'd care to.
I'll work on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll hit the pom-poms and stuff.
Okay, so I'm going to go back in here to the Commission on Chamorro Independence, but I've got another limerick here from the poet laureate of Tall Tales, and the framework of this limerick is that if Guam did become independent, so imagine that Guam did become independent, and then for background music in the back of your head play the Sam, Sam, my dear Uncle Sam, won't you please come back to Guam as I read the limerick? And here it goes. Uncle Sam left and went home. Chamorros now stand alone. Freedom abounding. Up there loud resounding. Is that an unmanned Chinese drone? The poet laureate of Tall Tales. Okay, so I just finished up here my explanation of what I would like to see the so-called Commission on Decolonization do, and it's be honest. I have another suggestion. If you're talking about what to do with the Davis case, I would give you the same advice. Be honest. Now, I suspect that there is going to be the chest pounders in the audience who say, we got to take this to the Supreme Court. And calmer heads will say, well, if you read the 2 Ninth Circuit decisions, chances of the Supreme Court, us getting anywhere in the Supreme Court are somewhere between slim and none. We're already $1 million in the hole for Davis's attorney's fees. If we did a cost-benefit analysis, it probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense to go to the Supreme Court. I don't care. We got to go to the Supreme Court. They can't push us around anymore. I suspect you'll hear that kind of sentiment. And then others will say, we'll take this all the way to the United Nations. You know, they might as well take it to the nearest Boy Scout council for all the good that it's going to do. Now, here's my advice about being honest. The government of Guam, in its defense of the so-called plebiscite law, has attempted to finesse its way through it by saying, this is not about race. This is not about Chamorros at all. It's purely political. It's about native inhabitants, the people who were here in 1898. A lot of them were Chamorro, but they weren't all Chamorro. Native inhabitants. And it hasn't worked worth a darn because it's not true to start with. If you look at the history of the statutory development of the plebiscite law, you can see that very clearly, that it was all about Chamorros until Rice versus Cayetano was decided, and then all of a sudden, a big change. So this is my advice. Be honest. What I'm suggesting that you do is come out and be upfront and say this is about Chamorros. It's only about Chamorros, and this is why we're saying this. This is the argument that to make. There is a distinct racial group on Guam called Chamorros, a recognizable ethnic racial group on Guam called Chamorros. You recognize that when you passed the Organic Act and you said that preference in government jobs and government training should go to people of Guamanian ancestry. A little translation is necessary here. In 1950, the word Guamanian meant Chamorro. I don't want to go into a long explanation. Just proceed on the basis that that's what Guamanian used to mean. I'll give you one short anecdote. Back in the days when Daryl's father and I were teaching at George Washington High School, I was new and I heard people speaking this language, and I thought, I'd like to try that myself. And one day I asked a couple teachers in the teachers' lounge, I said, I hear people, when they're using your language, I hear them say Chamorro quite often. What does that mean, Chamorro? And the answer was, that's how we say Guamanian in our language. True story, Daryl. So, the government ought to present itself as trying to address a historical fact that in 1898 the United States took over the island of Guam, which was primarily populated by this distinct racial, cultural group that is different from the other people who live on the island now, and because of various historical factors has not had the opportunity that some other distinct racial, cultural groups in the United States have had. And therefore, the Supreme Court should at least give Congress the opportunity to recognize this distinct racial, cultural group, and I'm just going to use a real loose word here, provide justice, without attempting to determine what that means. But finessing it, saying, oh no, this is about native inhabitants, etc. Whatever argument you've given it away. You haven't even advanced it. So if you fleshed out the argument that I'm suggesting here, maybe the Supreme Court will buy it, maybe the Supreme Court won't buy it, but at least you'll know. At least you can put an end to that particular chapter of this particular story. It would have probably been better to advance this argument a couple of justices ago, because historically Republicans have always been imperialists and Democrats have not been imperialists, but that's the way it goes sometimes. This court would be rather hard to predict on this type of question. And the second approach is this. Instead of horsing around, going to the Fourth Committee and trying to get somebody like China or Iran or Venezuela, countries like that, to go to bat for you, go to the United States Congress and lay out your case and tell the United States Congress what you want. Because Guam is an unincorporated territory, and therefore Congress has great flexibility in how it deals with us. That's perhaps the unintended consequence of genius in the insular cases, because Puerto Rico has a different setup from us. Virgin Islands and Guam are pretty much the same. American Samoa is different. Northern Marianas is very different. So if you really want to have this plebiscite, go to the United States Congress and say, this is who we are, this is what we want to do, this is how we want to do it. And if Congress says you can do it, you can. Otherwise, you're just engaging in this charade where you really want to be independent, but you want me to pay for it, basically what it amounts to. You want a tax-supported government commission to pursue this independence angle for you. I don't think it's going to work very well. I suppose if you want to keep trying it, fine, because it does provide jobs for a few people, and I suppose it makes some people quite happy to think that they're really doing something that matters. But in the final analysis, really, you haven't done anything, because the government, no one has taken any step whatsoever to bring about decolonization of the island of Guam, other than pay a lot of lip service to their undertaking. So that would be my advice to the Commission on Decolonization, which I have, by the way, a vocabulary lesson here. You have to understand the vocabulary here. It's really the Chamorro Independence Commission, and the prime movers behind the Chamorro Independence Commission are looking for Guam exit, or Gwexit, and the ultimate goal is Chamocracy, government of Chamorros, by Chamorros, for Chamorros, Chamocracy. No attention has been paid to the Piennois, that is the folks who live here and have lived here for a long, long time, that wouldn't be part of the Chamocracy. What disposition would be made of them? And then, of course, the ultimate goal here, the irredenta goal, is the Chamorro Socialist Republic of Guahan. That would be the thing that the independentistas are really pushing for, the Chamorro Socialist Republic of Guam. Okay, let's see what's next on the card here. I've got Moylan versus the Democrats. I'm pretty enthusiastic here about Moylan lately. He's finally started to act like a Republican. For a while, he was kind of keeping it undercover. But there's a story in today's paper, it's the Daily News of all papers, where Moylan introduced 4 bills seeking to reduce government costs, including not funding deputy directors' posts from department budgets, not funding the cellular phone services of more officials, including the governor and the speaker. Moylan's proposals also include eliminating certain posts, including the Washington liaison post currently held by Delegate Madeline Bordallo. It's pretty gutsy and pretty important, and I'd say right on target. And, of course, it's the kind of thing that we would expect Republicans to do when there's a Democrat governor and a Democrat legislature. A person who has guest hosted this program before, and will do it again, has given us the Tijeras Taggarty. The Tijeras Taggarty is a theory that says that a legislature, in order to function properly, must be like a scissors, 2 sharp blades in opposition to one another. And he's absolutely right. So for a while, we've got, right now we have 9 Democrats and 4 who don't seem to want to get involved, and then 1 who seems to be trying to be a Republican, which is Jim Moylan. I don't know if he's probably going to have more success turning the 9 Democrats than he is with the 4 who don't want to get involved. But this idea of his funding of the deputy directors, we ran into an organic problem when the 34th Guam legislature attempted to ban the position of deputy director from the government of Guam. Our attorney general at the time, Liz Anderson, said, you can't do that. You can't interfere with how the governor operates his own executive branch. So Moylan took, I think, a really clever approach, and he said, yeah, you can have deputy directors if you want. Budget them out of your office, not out of the department where they happen to be assigned. So if you're going to have a deputy director of the police department, which we've never had before, that's another one of Lou's economy measures, create a new deputy director position. You could have them, but you're going to have to pay for them yourself. And then the idea of the cell phones, I happen to have a cell phone here. Ray thinks my cell phone is really funny. He says that it's somewhat antiquated. And I suppose most people aren't used to seeing a cell phone that you have to wind up.
Yeah, the wind up is what gives you
yeah. Sometimes I misplace the key, and if you can't get a hold of me, it's because I've misplaced the key and I wasn't able to wind up my cell phone. But I don't see why the taxpayers should have to pay for the cell phones for any government official. And that's another part of Moylan's bill. He wants to do away with the position of Madeline Bordallo. At the time that that position was created, I would have probably shrugged my shoulders and said, because I would have thought maybe it would have some merit, because in her case, she's a Washington old-timer. She knows her way around. The ability of our representative, Mike San Nicolas, is not unlimited. So I thought, you know, two heads better than one, that sort of thing, until I saw how she behaved and how she seemed to be angry at Michael San Nicolas because he took her job away from her, tried to throw a monkey wrench in his plan to put the war claims legislation back on track, off track because of the way she'd handle it, et cetera. And now my sense is we don't need to have somebody, we don't need to pay somebody to go back there to give Michael San Nicolas a hard time. So let's abolish that office. I'm in favor of that. We've had Washington offices before. I don't know if they've ever been real successful, but I think we've learned our lesson this time around. See, there was another element here in Moylan's plan. Yeah, executive security. Again, if you're going to have executive security, you got to put it in your budget, Governor, the governor's budget, not in the police department's budget, which makes eminently good sense. First of all, we shouldn't be using police officers for executive security anyhow, because the average cop's training does not include executive security. And I've seen pretty good examples myself, not this time around, but in the past, where you would see the government official sitting down in a restaurant eating lunch with their security, with their security sitting at the same table eating lunch. What kind of security is that? Leaving the car, you know, parked out in a place where everyone can see what it is. It's a marked car, et cetera. Just no concept of what executive security amounts to. Cops are trained to be cops. So the best place for a cop is out on the street, not being a chauffeur for the governor or lieutenant governor or whatever. So I hear Michael playing Dave Brubeck's Take 5 again, so we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back for the home stretch and that announcement that I've been promising you since the beginning of the program.
Hi, welcome to this Subway ad for the new ciabatta collection. How do you want it?
I'll take the slam poultry.
Sure. Italian ciabatta with mozzarella. When hunger reigns, you're my favorite umbrella. Tasty garlic steak and provolone. With you, my taste buds are never alone. Savory chicken pesto, you have my affection. For you complete the ciabatta collection. Thank you. That was the new ciabatta collection by Subway. Limited time only at participating restaurants.
It's important to have claims process that works for you. At Guahan Insurance Services, we make things simple and convenient. Same door you walk in to purchase your insurance is the same door you open to file your claim. We can't pretend that the car insurance claims process is fun, but we can promise a hassle-free and speedy recovery without any runarounds. For your home, auto, and business insurance, visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center on Marine Corps Drive in Tamuning. Don't forget to like us on Facebook or give us a call at 475-1162 or text 929-SAVE. That's 929-7283.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Okay, so here we are. Call to the post. Kentucky, as you were, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky. home of the Kentucky Derby. I'm heading down the home stretch now. I've got about 7 more minutes to wrap up this episode, this exciting, elucidating, informative, educational. Help me here, Michael. Have I covered all the bases?
I think that's got it. Yeah.
Pretty much got it, huh? Episode of Tall Tales. And today I'm going to announce that this is I not only have about 7 minutes to wrap up today's program, but I'm going to have to be gone for a while. I'm coming back. Don't worry. I'll be back. And during the time that I'm gone, the program will be very aptly hosted by, here he is, Daryl Taggarty.
That's right. Here I am once again.
Yeah. So, Daryl, greet your Tall Tales International Radio listening audience.
I am so happy to be back here, but I'm so sorry that you're leaving, Bob. I am just enjoying immensely listening to your show. And so, no, I don't want you to leave. Yes, I'm ready to take this chair, but no, I don't want you to leave.
You know, I could sit around and listen to stories like this all day long, Daryl. Flattery will get you everywhere with me.
Well, I've been really enjoying the way that you slice and dice the issues, because people need to know.
Okay.
They need to understand how serious it is, and how serious it is when you walk into a court or when you declare a new function of the government of Guam. And if you're not being totally candid at the beginning, well, then how candid could you be when you get 10 or 20 years down the road and try to explain your reason for being?
The Ethics Commission being a pretty good example, huh? We're going to have an Ethics Commission, right?
I still don't understand how you can have an Ethics Commission. And this is where you're going to have to explain that, I guess, when you get back.
Yeah.
Or call in. And that is, how can you have an Ethics Commission that's not going to be able to act against a person who's protected under a different set of rules and law? You have 3 standards. You've got the law. Was a law broken? 2, was a regulation not followed? And then you've got ethics, but the ethics are not laid out with the same level of certainty as the employment contract and the law and the job description and the regulations.
The code, I think, pretty much establishes some of the boundaries. But my problem is this: you can't have an ethics commission without an investigator. Mm-hmm. There's a certain bureaucracy that goes with an ethics commission. You can't just say, zap, you're an ethics commission, and expect it's going to work.
Right.
So no thought was given to that at all by this administration. They appointed 5 people to the ethics commission, got the photo taken, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And I suspect, I made the comment earlier that there are people who, if in that position, would be able to get that ethics commission up and running. But it takes a special kind of person.
Yes.
And I don't see that special kind of person amongst the ones that were appointed right now. It's got to be somebody who's going to go to the governor and the Tall Tales and the media, et cetera, and say, we can't function as an ethics commission until we've got a budget, until we've got an investigator, until we've got a staff, et cetera. Otherwise, we're just pretending. And until somebody comes along and says that, we're not going to have a real ethics commission.
Well, it's almost like the board to oversee the charter schools. They didn't give it a staff or a place, and so the chair was sort of shepherding the boxes from office to office, and they weren't supported. And we see how far that's gone.
Yeah.
And so do we have to wait 6 or 8 years before, well, I guess if Lou goes 2 terms, then there's your 6 to 8 years. That's 6 or 7 years, right?
We already know that one of our campaign planks in her campaign platform is going to be how she established the Ethics Commission, and nobody else ever did, and she did it and got it done, and so on.
It's done.
Yeah. So, Daryl, tomorrow you're going to take the helm. If you got any thoughts about what you're going to cover tomorrow?
You know, there's no telling what's going to be in the newspaper tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
You're just going to have to see what's there. And also, there's so much news that's been going on just in the last 10 days. You know, are more shoes going to drop? You've covered a lot of issues just in the last 10 days, last week and the past couple of days here.
Sure.
And is the pace going to, are we going to get something new again that's...
Well, you use the figure of speech, shoes dropping. I think a more appropriate one would be thrown under the bus. How many?
Who's going to be thrown under the bus
next?
In tomorrow's, it happened today, and then it'll show up in the news tomorrow, and tonight and tomorrow.
And Robert Underwood made the remark that it appears that Adelup's going to need a bigger bus.
Yes.
As they keep throwing people under it. Well, we're listening to the plaintive strains of Ravel's Bolero, Daryl, so you're going to have to take over the blue pencil here, and you'll be the one that does Demi Ekotny.
Yep.
And I know that you are incorruptible, so that you will award the Blue Star only to the more meritorious of the two.
Absolutely. I will uphold your high standards, and if I don't, I'm sure your faithful listeners will call me on it.
That's our international radio listening audience.
I'm depending on them.
Okay.
And very best to you, and enjoy your trip, and we'll see you back here in 62 days.
And as we say in show business, Daryl, break a leg.
You're listening to KUSG Hagadnya.
I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. After two mass shootings over the weekend, President Trump calling for Congress to pass so-called red flag laws that would permit guns to be removed from people who've shown to be a potential threat.
Republican Senator Lindsey Graham says he and Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal will push the idea forward in the Senate.
We're trying to empower police officers to do something before it's too late with plenty of due process. We're not trying to take anybody's guns away from them.
California Senator Dianne Feinstein wants Congress to reinstate a ban on assault weapons.
Fox's Mark Meredith reports while the president spoke to the country on Monday, he did not propose any new sweeping gun law changes. Classmates of one of the victims of the shooting in El Paso held a vigil Monday night for 15-year-old Javier Rodriguez, the youngest of the 22 victims. He was at the store buying school supplies when he was killed. He was remembered Monday night by a fellow student.
Javier was one of a kind. If anyone was having a bad day, he made it a better day.
Residents in Dayton, Ohio gathered Monday for a prayer service near the spot where 9 people were shot there on Saturday.
We give thanks for the first responders who put their lives in the way of harm and violence and death. We give thanks for their heroic actions and how they saved others. Broaden our minds so that we're mindful of all families who suffered at the hands of violence.
Police Chief Richard Beal says they're still searching for the motive. President Trump will visit both El Paso and Dayton tomorrow. Later today, Ohio's Governor Mike DeWine says he'll offer proposals to stem gun violence. The Trump administration labeling China as a currency manipulator late Monday as the yuan closed to an 11-year low against the dollar. That would help lessen the impact of the trade tariffs on $300 billion in Chinese imports, which the president threatens to impose the first of next month. This is Fox News.
Fox Nation is the place for exclusive content you can't get anywhere else. New opinion shows from Laura Ingraham, Tucker Carlson, and Tommy Lahren you can only get by signing up for Fox Nation. Plus, the real stories behind the headlines. Documentaries on Chappaquiddick, Jimmy Hoffa, and more that you'll only find on Fox Nation. More of the opinion done right you crave? It's on Fox Nation. Documentaries and specials you can't get anywhere else? They're on Fox Nation. So go to foxnation.com today and sign up now for Fox Nation. Opinion done right now.
Tucker Carlson. There's just so much barking and noise and yelling. Our role is to take 3 steps back and discern what really matters. Sean Hannity.
The most important thing that we do, we are looking out for the forgotten men and women in this country.
Laura Ingraham.
They're going to get a straight shooter, no holds barred. I'm not going to cut people slack.
Fox is the one place where dissent is allowed.
We have voices. We won't be silent.
Who controls my voice? Nobody.
Fox News Channel. Real news, real honest opinion.
It's decades in jail for the man who admitted mailing devices that looked like pipe bombs to CNN and several Democrat politicians last year.
Cesar Sayoc says he sent a total of 16 pipe bombs to high-profile Democrats, a famous actor, and cable network CNN. Lawyers defending him hoped a troubled childhood and signs of mental illness would earn him a minimum sentence of 10 years. They also said Sayoc has an obsession with President Trump, likening attending his rallies to the effects of a drug. The judge gave him 20 years, saying it was Sayoc's intention to terrorize people. Sayoc cried when the sentence was delivered. Prosecutors asked for life, but the judge says he concluded the bombs were not to explode, but to frighten. In New York City, Gernal Scott, Fox News.
4 California voters suing now to stop a new state law that would force candidates for statewide or federal offices to release 5 years of income tax returns as a condition to having their names appear on the state's primary ballot. A Jesuit school in Indiana appealing a decree from their archbishop over the employment of a gay teacher.
Rebuff Preparatory School sent a letter to the school community saying the head of the Jesuits Midwest province has asked church officials in Rome to overrule a decree issued by Archbishop Charles Thompson in June, saying the school will no longer be recognized or identified as Catholic after the school decided against firing a teacher who was in a same-sex marriage earlier this year. He says Mass will continue to be celebrated before classes every day in the school chapel, but other Masses during the school year will not be allowed. Lisa Lacera, Fox News.
Trump administration freezing all of the assets of the government of Venezuela. The president issuing an order Monday night that bans American companies and individuals from doing business with the government of Venezuela or from its disputed president Nicolas Maduro over Maduro's continued usurpation of human rights. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
In a world where our cuisines unite, the Colonel has joined together your favorite extra crispy KFC fried chicken with an authentic hot and sweet Korean glaze, bringing you KFC's Korean fried chicken. It's here on Guam for a limited time.
It's truly a taste of Korea. Try KFC's Korean fried chicken and also available in Korean hot chicken wings. KFC, it's finger-licking good.
Introducing Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
Hi, I'm Bob.
Purveyor of truth and justice.
Well, hold on. That's a bit over the top, isn't it? I just want to tell the Points International radio listening audience and Tall Tales buffs all over the world to take heart. I'm back. Tall Tales airs afternoons at 4 right here on The Point. Ray says set your radio to 93.3 FM and forget it. You needn't touch it again.
Well, we're coming to your city. Gonna play our guitars and sing you a country song. We'll all be flying higher than a jetliner. And if you want a little bang in your yin-yang, come along.
Kamala Harris said she's not trying to restructure society. Well, I am.
If you think any of this wonkiness is going to deal with this dark psychic force of the collectivized hatred that this president is bringing up in this country, then I'm afraid that the Democrats are going to see some very dark days.
If you agree with me, go to Joe 30330 and help me in this fight.
Freedom is back in style. Welcome to the revolution. Yeah, we're coming to your city. Gonna play our guitars and sing you a country song.
Sean Hannity. The new Sean Hannity Show. More behind-the-scenes information on breaking news and more bold, inspired solutions for America. Stay right here for our final news roundup and information overload.
And I think that at the end of the day, especially because this was a white supremacist manifesto, that I want to say with more moral clarity that Donald Trump is responsible for this.
We have to have the capacity to call it as we see it. Facts, as John Adams said, are stubborn things. This kind of rhetoric unquestionably was going to, you've used the word accelerant, it was going to create a climate in which people were going to do unspeakable things. Because of the spoken word, people can do unspeakable things.
You have no legitimacy and you have no standing until you have your own personal self-examination about the contributions that you have made to white nationalism and white supremacy and its rise in the United States of America.
I don't. I mean, I know that white supremacists feel empowered with this president. I know that. It's clear they feel empowered when he attacks people. And our country is better than this. Our country is just better than this kind of divisive, racist talk by a president of the United States.
We are in a cold civil war. We are in a cold civil war. And there's some people who bear the burden of it, Chuck. We have children in El Paso right now, right, who just witnessed their family members, their friends, shot down because somebody thinks there's a Hispanic invasion of the country, which is almost the exact same language of the President of the United States.
Donald Trump isn't, as you rightly noted, he didn't pull the trigger, but he embraces, along with a whole bunch of others, he embraces a view of America that some scholars will call inherent vote democracy. He thinks that this is, in fact, a white nation.
And when you talk about Mexicans as criminals and rapists and the country under siege, you have unstable people who are going to see that as a sign that they have got to take up arms and do the horrific things that we just saw in El Paso.
He's been calling Mexican immigrants rapists and criminals. I don't know, like, members of the press, what the hold on a second. Connect the dots about what he's been doing in this country. He's not tolerating racism, he's promoting racism. He's not tolerating violence, he's inciting racism and violence in this country.
Is it fair, John, to tie the president to this violence?
Well, Dan, whether or not it's fair, he's going to have to answer those questions. The bottom line is this president has had a rhetoric on immigration and on immigrants that has been deeply divisive. And this is going to be something that he is going to have to answer for.
All right, news roundup and information overload hour, Sean Hannity Show. And, of course, the president today saying in one voice, our nation must condemn racism, bigotry, white supremacy, things that he has said in the past, but, of course, ignored. There are so many different angles. Obviously, you've got the whole blame game, the Elizabeth Warren blaming Fox News, blaming the president, Bernie Sanders, Beto O'Rourke, he's a white nationalist again and again and again. And, it's the same predictable thing that happens. We've offered solutions nobody ever wants to hear what we've offered in terms of, for example, school shootings. It would also impact places like Walmart and other places, any public places, movie theaters, wherever it happens to be. I like the idea of here you have trained professionals, former military people, former law enforcement people that I think can secure any perimeter, any building, any place, anytime, and yes, they're armed. That would be helpful. Unfortunately, there are sick people, twisted, ugly people that have these distorted views, have been indoctrinated into whatever sick philosophy they have, including white supremacists, radical Islamics. Then you have the Ted Kaczynski, Al Gore worshipers out there, or the Bernie Sanders guy that is shooting guys up in a ball field, Republicans. And I said, in each of these cases, no, I'm not going to do what they did with the shooting in the ball field that nearly killed Steve Scalise. We know what happened in that case. Just because it's a Bernie supporter. Bernie doesn't support that, nor does President Trump support this, nor does Fox News support this, nor does Sean Hannity support this. And it is just a cheap, the cheap politicizing of tragedies. Over the weekend, and it's horrible. Who wants to turn on the news? I don't think that many of you know that, and it didn't take long to find it, there were 46 gunshot deaths in places like Chicago, New York, Baltimore, and Detroit. When? This weekend. How many other people know that? And those reports, by the way, that's just Friday and Saturday. I don't know about others that were shot on Sunday. And this happens almost every weekend. The media can't politicize it. They never talk about it. 9 people killed in Dayton, as we all know. And we know the tragedy of El Paso. I haven't seen any national coverage whatsoever of the 7 people who were shot dead in Chicago this weekend, or the 46 others who were wounded. You know, why do I suspect that? Because that doesn't impact Donald Trump, that they don't want to talk about that, as we have. Scrolling the names of people shot, and it goes on forever on television. I've done it a number of times. I'll do it again tonight. You know, it's beyond comprehension. When people want to politicize tragedy, they're going to politicize tragedy. And blaming Trump for mass shootings, well, it has also prompted threats against his supporters. As the Washington Examiner pointed out, Trump advisor with 38 years law enforcement appeared on Fox, whatever. Yeah, a lot of death threats go out if you happen to be a conservative. Everybody seems to forget. Every top Democrat, I think, is rushed to politicize this event. But let's go back to December 2014. Black Lives Matter had a protest in New York City. Hundreds of protesters marching down the streets. What do we want? Dead cops. When do we want them now? Or pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon. Well, 5 months after all of that, in February of 2016, President Obama actually hosted Black Lives Matter's leader at the White House. And they were invited in. Why? I didn't see the same type of coverage in that particular case. There is a lot of hypocrisy to go around. Here's the thing that we've all got to understand. And it's sad. There are sick, ugly, evil ideologies out there. White supremacists among them. Nazi sympathizers among them. Klan members among them. Then you have the crazy Louis Farrakhan, virulent anti-Semites, racists. They exist too. Black Lives Matter. What do we want? Dead cops. When do we want them? Now. Then you've got environmental extremists, Kaczynski. Then you've got Bernie supporters. You cannot put the blame. It is so intellectually lazy what the media predictably does here. You know, look at, for example, if we look at the statistics, illegal immigrants, crime, the data, the 90% of heroin, and how many people did we lose in the last year? We have numbers for, in 2016, we lost 15,469 people to heroin. 90% of that comes across the southern border. 15,482 comes across the southern border. I haven't heard any compassion, wonder, or desire when we talk about all the homicides in a 2-year period that have taken place by illegal immigrant criminals, or the 30,000 violent sexual assaults, or the 100,000 violent assaults. That never gets discussed. It's no, if you say you want a wall built with a big door, somehow that means you're racist. Anyway, here to discuss, we have Jonathan Gillum back with us, former FBI agent, federal air marshal, author of the bestseller Sheep No More. And with us also, we welcome back to the program, it's a longtime friend of the program. We wish we met under better circumstances. Jennifer Falasinos is with us, and she is the widow of Nicholas, who, of course, was murdered by terrorists on December 2nd, 2015, San Bernardino. 14 people killed, 22 seriously injured. In that particular incident, it was in a regional center in San Bernardino. And that was a high-profile shooting that took place. Jennifer, how are you doing? It's great to have you back. I wish we did meet under better circumstances at the time.
Yes, definitely, but it's good to talk to you, Sean. Yeah, it's almost been 4 years since that happened, which is just unbelievable. At this time, I'm doing pretty good. Life's very different than it was, of course, when Nick was alive. I do have PTSD, and things like what happened over the weekend, of course, affect it. Overall, I'm doing okay. I'm gearing up to start the new school year. I'm a first-grade teacher.
Well, I don't know if you ever get over something like that. Because you never expect that it's going to happen, and I know the people in Dayton and the people in El Paso are now going to go through all the pain and horror that you've been through the last 4 years. I like to look for solutions in these matters. And Jonathan, for example, the school shooting incidents, I know there's the rush always to politicize the incident, and then the rush is to say, well, what was the person's politics? Some people are just insane. The politics doesn't matter. It's just an excuse. It's just an excuse to, in this particular case, bludgeon Trump for any reason. I don't believe that Bernie Sanders was responsible for the guy that shot up that baseball field and Steve Scalise that day and others. I just think that there are crazy people and they have whatever insanity and demons that they're dealing with, and the best antidote to this evil is we've got to protect our schools, our malls, our stores better than we have been. Short of that, it's going to be gun confiscation, which is the only thing that liberals ever bring up, Jonathan.
Yeah, and, I want to just say this real quick. What has happened this weekend? What happened this weekend? What happened with the Bernie Sanders supporter, for instance, that shot up the baseball field? I agree that we cannot throw the actual politicians under the bus when it comes to these people going out and doing these things. But I will say this, is look at the rhetoric that goes on after these things happen, and we can show that there's a direct correlation with a lot of these people that end up carrying out these acts of terror. In the case of the San Bernardino shooting, the Islamic fundamentalists or radicals, whichever way you want to call them, and their rhetoric motivated those shooters. Just over the past 48 hours, politicians coming out and saying white nationalists, white supremacists, blaming Trump, and that inflames the situation, and it's also lies. I read the entire manifesto from the guy from El Paso. I looked at the social media of the guy from Ohio. Neither one of these people were white supremacists. Their skin color was white. The one in Ohio was a leftist. He was a supporter of Antifa. The guy in El Paso, in his manifesto, when he speaks about a race, and he mentions it 4 or 5 times, what he is saying is that he is afraid that governments and corporations are trying to get rid of the races so they can control people. That has nothing to do with white power. But you don't hear any of this stuff from these politicians, and that is dangerous, and that we can say has a direct correlation of motivating other people who are extremists.
The extremism manifests itself in a whole host of ways. There is a rapid and scary rise, Jennifer, as you know, of anti-Semitism, not just in Europe, but right here in the United States, and an unwillingness of Congress to condemn virulent anti-Semitism. That would be one. These white supremacist, nationalist idiots, they're obviously people that are scary because of their sick, twisted, ugly beliefs. Those that believe that in a caliphate, which is convert or die, and would be willing to strap bombs on their own children and promise them virgins in heaven, that's a scary ideology too. They're all, to me, a variation of the same theme: sick, twisted, ugly, evil. I don't know what any other words to use to describe it. Evil exists. The answer to me is very different than the predictable answers that are being brought forth after these incidents. What do you say as somebody that had to live through this hell?
Exactly. These people are pure evil, the ones that are doing this, and evil does exist in this world, and I don't think these people, some of the politicians and other people, realize what's going on that way, that there is evil in this world. Yeah, I don't understand why they come out on anything and saying it's that these people were Trump supporters and this and that, yet we have all this anti-Semitism going on.
Scary, isn't it?
Very scary.
Our nation's oldest colleges were founded to teach students to seek truth, recognize what is beautiful, hold up what is good, but the vast majority of these academic institutions these days have abandoned a lot of their missions, and they're locked in the grip of political correctness, no longer allowing the free and open exchange of ideas, ideals, and opinions, rejecting the idea of objective truth. Thankfully, none of that applies to Hillsdale College. For almost 2 centuries now, Hillsdale, they have remained true to their original mission to provide sound learning, to preserving liberty, religious liberty, and intellectual piety. And Hillsdale, now celebrating their 175th anniversary, still committed to offering its students the very best liberal arts education in the land, and as well as to extending its mission nationwide through its many outreach efforts on behalf of the cause of liberty. That includes free professional online courses that you can take. That includes the publication of their free digest, and that includes their Kirby Center for Constitutional Studies and Citizenship in Washington, D.C. And by the way, their Barney charter school initiative that helps establish classic K-12 charter schools nationwide. Pursuing truth, defending liberty since 1844. A happy 175th anniversary to Hillsdale College.
James Comey, you have the right to remain silent, and you might want to use it. This is the Sean Hannity Show.
In the new school year, millions of young people will enroll at America's colleges. They'll face nonstop liberal bias and indoctrination. Students with a good conservative foundation will return home with an ideology that is frankly anti-American. Hi, I'm Lawrence Jones. I report on these and other stories for Sean Hannity. But my main job is editor-in-chief of Campus Reform, the only website that exposes what's really happening on America's college campuses. Stories that the mainstream media doesn't want you to hear. You can expose more left-wing bias on campus by donating to Campus Reform at takebackthecampus.org. There are few places on college campuses for a conservative perspective. Conservative students are assaulted, speech is suppressed. A generation of conservative young people are being demoralized, discouraged, and indoctrinated. Worse, these college campuses breed dangerous ideologies that are starting to infect the rest of America. Ideologies like identity politics, which treats everyone as though their skin color and sex are the only thing that matters. Ideologies like socialism, which will destroy our freedoms and the ideals of the American founding. Campus Reform relies on a grassroots network of students who report on leftist bias, indoctrination, and anti-conservative abuses at dozens of universities. And we get results. Your gift to Campus Reform will strengthen this network of conservative journalists at a critical time for America. Donate today at takebackthecampus.org. Because of Campus Reform, the liberal college administrators back down. Liberal professors are disciplined. Violent left-wing students are held accountable in the court of law. Campus Reform is a project of the Leadership Institute, which trains the next generation of conservative leaders. And Campus Reform is entirely funded by thousands of conservatives just like you. Join the fight to expose the truth about America's college campuses. Donate to Campus Reform at takebackthecampus.org. That's takebackthecampus.org. Takebackthecampus.org. Do it now.
I'm out there everywhere our troops go. I've seen it all. Everything. Things that aren't on the news. I'm that thin line between our guys coming home or, So when they need me, I give them everything I've got. Sometimes medical supplies can be in short supply. Stretchers, medic packs, tourniquets. But I can always look to Troops Direct to help me fill those gaps. Support Troops Direct, because when I need it now. For more information, visit troopsdirect.org.
You must be your fairy godmother. Yes.
It doesn't take a fairy godmother to tell you that the right fit means everything.
Good heavens, child. You can't go in that.
Children under 4'9" need to be in a booster seat because they aren't ready for adult safety belts alone. Remember that 4'9" is the magic number, and get your little pumpkin there safely in a booster seat.
Oh, thank you.
For more information, visit boosterseat.gov. This has been a message from the U.S. Department of Transportation and the Ad Council.
This is Mark Anthony. Did you know that every 3 seconds someone needs blood? Or that each year more than 4 million Americans need blood transfusions? Just one blood donation from you saves up to 3 lives? It's easy. And size, shape, and color don't make a difference to those who receive it. Become a blood donor.
For more information, call the American Association of Blood Banks at 1-866-FROM-YOU. That's 1-866-376-6968.
Check it out, it's the Terminator. Hey, when'd you get back, huh?
Did you have to shoot anyone?
Why are you so distant? Are you not happy to see me?
So what's the deal? You gonna get a job now or what?
Why are you being so jumpy? Put all that stuff behind you, okay?
No one knows what it's like to come back from Iraq or Afghanistan unless they were there. Join other veterans at communityofveterans.org because we know where you're coming from. Brought to you by Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America and the Ad Council.
As a veteran of Iraq or Afghanistan, joining IAVA.org really helps in the transition home. It's a network of OIF and OEF vets like me who've got your back here, just like we did over there. That means when you need help navigating the GI Bill, we've got your back. And when you're dealing with the transition home, we've got your back. Or when you just want someone to share stories with, we've got your back. Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America is there for you. Join our community at IAVA.org. We've got your back.
Brought to you by IAVA and the Ad Council.
Jill, why don't you tell the class what you did this weekend?
Well, my dad and I went in search of some magical minnows and found a zillion of them in the stream from our lookout rock. Then my sister and I escaped from an evil slug king and went back to my super twig fort for safety. Then we told stories till it got dark, and the Big Dipper led us all the way home.
Wow. Where were you, Jill?
We went to the forest. It's not that far away.
Ask your parents to take you and your friends to the forest this week. It's closer than you think. Check out discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
All right, final moments. Jennifer Thalasinos, she is the widow of Nicholas Thalasinos. Remember, in the San Bernardino horrific shooting that took place out there. And Jonathan Gillum, we only have time for closing thoughts. Jennifer, we'll give you 30 seconds, your last words.
We have to remember that, as you said, this country was founded on God and founded on Christian and Jewish principles. I think because we've gotten so far away from that, that's part of the reason why all of this evil is coming out now, and you just need to be vigilant when you're out. Be careful. Hopefully things will begin to turn around. For now, it's just we are living in a very scary world.
You're in our prayers always, Jennifer. You hang in there. I know people are going through now exactly the sadness, the heartache, the pain that you went through 4 years ago. Jonathan, about 20 seconds. By the way, Jonathan's book, Sheep No More, on Hannity.com.
We have a saying in Special Forces that I may not be able to save your life, but I will revenge your death if I can. And I want to promise Jennifer and all the other people out there that have lost loved ones, I will never allow this nonsense to continue in the aspect and with any sense that I can do that. And I totally call on the American people to say the same thing. Be aware. Stand against lying politicians, and don't let this continue. We can stop it.
Thank you both so much for being with us. When we come back, we go to your calls, toll-free, 800-941-SEAN, if you want to be a part of the program. Quick break, right back. Glad you're with us. We'll continue.
This is Nnamdi Asamoah. I play football for the Philadelphia Eagles, but what I do off the field with United Way might be more important. I'm a volunteer tutor and mentor. Why? Because over 1 million kids a year drop out of school, and that's not okay. It takes 12 years to create a graduate, but it takes about the same time to create a dropout. And the difference between a child becoming one or the other could be me, or it could be you. Studies show that if we get to these kids earlier, their chances are better. And kids who read well by 3rd grade are more likely to graduate. So join me in United Way. Suit up and take the pledge. Become a volunteer reader, tutor, or mentor. Because when a child succeeds, we all succeed. Give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Take the pledge at unitedway.org. Brought to you by United Way, the Ad Council, and the National Football League.
In 1977, an 8-year-old boy picked up the game of golf from his father. The odds of that same boy winning the U.S. Open twice, 1 in 1.2 billion. The odds of him having a child diagnosed with autism, 1 in 110. Ernie Els encourages you to learn the signs of autism at autismspeaks.org. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
My name is Dale Pazinski, and this is how I live United. I volunteer with United Way, helping the homeless in my community by teaching computer skills and helping them build a basic resume to save on their very own USB drive. It's huge when somebody says, "Hey man, that job that you helped me apply for, I got it." My name is Dale Pazinski. I help people achieve financial independence. So I don't just wear the shirt, I live it.
Give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Go to liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
NASCAR champion Bobby Labonte here with my brother Terry and my nephew Justin. You know, every sport has its essential safety gear.
For racing, we wear helmets, fire retardant suits, and Nomex gloves.
For fishing, waterfowl hunting, and boating, we wear life jackets.
After an intense race, there's nothing more relaxing than bass fishing.
Or a little duck hunting on the lake.
But we're the first ones to tell you, on the track or on the water, accidents happen fast.
In a crash, there's no time to put on a helmet. And when a boater capsizes or is thrown from the boat, there's rarely time to reach a stowed life jacket.
But today's life jackets are lightweight and comfortable. Fishing or hunting, they don't get in your way.
That's why you won't catch a Labonte on the water without a life jacket.
Don't let us catch you either. Remember, you're in command. Boat safely.
This message brought to you by the United States Coast Guard. For more information on boating safety, visit www.uscgboating.org. This is All Hands Radio News. I'm Petty Officer Liz Vlahos.
If you think construction is a challenging endeavor on land, imagine doing it underwater. Chief Petty Officer Lynn Rodriguez takes us into the world of a CB diver.
When I'm getting ready to dive, I'm nervous, I'm excited, my heart starts racing, and I just hope that I get the job done and the weather and the water's cooperating with us. I am Chief Petty Officer Lynn Rodriguez. I am a Navy construction electrician and CB diver. We do underwater construction, we do demolition, build boat ramps, mooring inspections, cable inspections. Depends on the job and the location. We do some salvage, debris removal, depending where it's at. Underwater when I'm working, I feel good. I feel like it's just a way for me to get to work. But at the same time, you have a lot of other things you got to worry about. I have to worry about how much air do I have left. I got to worry about my buddy, because he's watching me and I'm watching him, making sure we're okay. And if we're lucky, we get to see. If not, everything is by feel. You always have a buddy with you. You're never doing anything by yourself. You're never alone. I followed my dad's advice to always prove myself and do what I can in the Navy and make him proud, make everyone proud. So I try to do that with everything I do. Being a woman, it's sometimes more challenging because we have to wear the same amount of gear that a man does, and we have to do the same amount of pull-ups that a man does for the physical training and the test. It's a challenge, but you can do it. You just got to set your mind to it. Taught me how to be a leader, independent, confident.
That's All Hands Radio News. For more information, go to Navy.mil, Navy.mil/underway, and Navy.mil/am.
Driving liberals crazy. 3 hours a day, every day. The Sean Hannity Show is back on the air.
All right, 25 to the top of the hour. We'll get to your calls here in a minute. 800-941-SEAN if you want to be a part of the program. One of the things that I've noticed about the corrupt media mob is they never really want to play the president in his own words. President spent almost 9 minutes discussing the absolute horror of what happened over the weekend, but there was other horror. 46 other people died this weekend, and it happens every weekend, and nobody ever reports it. I think I'm the only one on TV that has ever scrolled the names of people you've never heard about, just in Chicago alone. And it's simply because they can't advance the agenda to bludgeon Republicans, this president, as racist. It's sad. Anyway, here's the president in his own words earlier today.
Good morning. My fellow Americans, this morning, our nation is overcome with shock, horror, and sorrow. This weekend, more than 80 people were killed or wounded in 2 evil attacks. On Saturday morning in El Paso, Texas, a wicked man went to a Walmart store where families were shopping with their loved ones. He shot and murdered 20 people and injured 26 others, including precious little children. Then, in the early hours of Sunday morning, Dayton, Ohio, another twisted monster opened fire on a crowded downtown street. He murdered 9 people, including his own sister, and injured 27 others. The First Lady and I join all Americans in praying and grieving for the victims, their families, and the survivors. We will stand by their side forever. We will never forget. These barbaric slaughters are an assault upon our communities, an attack upon our nation, and a crime against all of humanity. We are outraged and sickened by this monstrous evil, the cruelty, the hatred, the malice, the bloodshed, and the terror. Our hearts are shattered for every family whose parents, children, husbands, and wives were ripped from their arms and their lives. America weeps for the fallen. We are a loving nation, and our children are entitled to grow up in a just, peaceful, and loving society. Together, we lock arms to shoulder the grief. We ask God in heaven to ease the anguish of those who suffer, and we vow to act with urgent resolve. I want to thank the many law enforcement personnel who responded to these atrocities with the extraordinary grace and courage of American heroes. I have spoken with Texas Governor Greg Abbott and Ohio Governor Mike DeWine, as well as Mayor DeMargo of El Paso, Texas, and Mayor Nan Whaley of Dayton, Ohio, to express our profound sadness and unfailing support. Today, we also send the condolences of our nation to President Obrador of Mexico and all the people of Mexico for the loss of their citizens in the El Paso shooting. Terrible, terrible thing. I have also been in close contact with Attorney General Barr and FBI Director Wray. Federal authorities are on the ground, and I have directed them to provide any and all assistance required, whatever is needed. The shooter in El Paso posted a manifesto online consumed by racist hate. In one voice, our nation must condemn racism, bigotry, and white supremacy. These sinister ideologies must be defeated. Hate has no place in America. Hatred warps the mind, ravages the heart, and devours the soul. We have asked the FBI to identify all further resources they need to investigate and disrupt hate crimes and domestic terrorism, whatever they need. We must recognize that the Internet has provided a dangerous avenue to radicalize disturbed minds and perform demented acts. We must shine light on the dark recesses of the Internet and stop mass murders before they start. The Internet, likewise, is used for human trafficking, illegal drug distribution, and so many other heinous crimes. The perils of the Internet and social media cannot be ignored, and they will not be ignored. In the 2 decades since Columbine, our nation has watched with rising horror and dread as one mass shooting has followed another, over and over again, decade after decade. We cannot allow ourselves to feel powerless. We can and will stop this evil contagion. In that task, we must honor the sacred memory of those we have lost by acting as one people. Open wounds cannot heal if we are divided. We must seek real bipartisan solutions. We have to do that in a bipartisan manner that will truly make America safer and better for all. First, we must do a better job of identifying and acting on early warning signs. I am directing the Department of Justice to work in partnership with local, state, and federal agencies, as well as social media companies, to develop tools that can detect mass shooters before they strike. As an example, the monster in the Parkland High School in Florida had many red flags against him, and yet nobody took decisive action. Nobody did anything. Why not? Second, we must stop the glorification of violence in our society. This includes the gruesome and grisly video games that are now commonplace. It is too easy today for troubled youth to surround themselves with a culture that celebrates violence. We must stop or substantially reduce this, and it has to begin immediately. Cultural change is hard, but each of us can choose to build a culture that celebrates the inherent worth and dignity of every human life. That's what we have to do. Third, we must reform our mental health laws to better identify mentally disturbed individuals who may commit acts of violence and make sure those people not only get treatment, but when necessary, involuntary confinement. Mental illness and hatred pulls the trigger, not the gun. Fourth, we must make sure that those judged to pose a grave risk to public safety do not have access to firearms, and that if they do, those firearms can be taken through rapid due process. That is why I have called for red flag laws, also known as extreme risk protection orders. Today, I'm also directing the Department of Justice to propose legislation ensuring that those who commit hate crimes and mass murders face the death penalty, and that this capital punishment be delivered quickly, decisively, and without years of needless delay. These are just a few of the areas of cooperation that we can pursue. I am open and ready to listen and discuss all ideas that will actually work and make a very big difference. Republicans and Democrats have proven that we can join together in a bipartisan fashion to address this plague. Last year, we enacted the Stop School Violence and Fix NICS Acts into law, providing grants to improve school safety and strengthening critical background checks for firearm purchases. At my direction, the Department of Justice banned bump stocks. Last year, we prosecuted a record number of firearms offenses. But there is so much more that we have to do. Now is the time to set destructive partisanship aside, so destructive, and find the courage to answer hatred with unity, devotion, and love. Our future is in our control. America will rise to the challenge. We will always have, and we always will, win. The choice is ours, and ours alone. It is not up to mentally ill monsters. It is up to us. If we are able to pass great legislation after all of these years, we will ensure that those who were attacked will not have died in vain. May God bless the memory of those who perished in Toledo. And may God protect them. May God protect all of those from Texas to Ohio. May God bless the victims and their families. May God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So it's just like with the Kavanaugh hearings. Yeah, okay, well, bludgeon Kavanaugh. Well, almost every other weekend they had parties. Almost every other weekend, and punch bowls, and they spiked the punch, and then they'd line up in a hall, and they gang raped these young girls, and it went on every other weekend. And then it becomes, well, I never saw Judge Kavanaugh spike the punch. He had a red Solo cup. He was near the punch bowl. I never saw him give it to anybody. And it goes on from there. And just like, Kavanaugh, well, what about the lieutenant governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia? No I believers in that case. What about the governor of Virginia and the third in charge? Oh, blackface, Ku Klux Klan outfits? No, we're not going to stay on that. Why? Oh, my God, why would we ever do that? All right, let's get to our phones. Let's say hi to Steve is in California, wants to go in a different direction. It's okay, Steve. How are you? Glad you called, sir.
I'm doing well. It's good to talk to you finally.
It's great to talk to you, sir.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about Bill Barr's decision not to go after Comey on this leaking stuff because it's low-laying fruit. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, Comey's admitted to everything in this charge, and I think it's a big mistake not going after him on this. Put him through the same hell that Mueller put all the Trump orbit people under
the last
2 years.
The only thing that, again, my sources are telling me, and we've been right pretty much all along, and as evidenced by the referral for potential prosecution with Comey on a number of issues. We were right about that. Those documents that were classified, that was a violation of the Espionage Act, and less than candid or lack of candor means lying. Well, that's what happened to Papadopoulos, Manafort, Cohn, should have happened to Hillary, and should eventually happen to Comey. But I think we've got many bigger issues in play, and I'm very, very peaceful about the process.
Yeah, I understand that, but you got a grand slam right in front of you here. I say go after it. You've explained it. Anybody can understand what's going on. All you got to watch is the video clips of that sanctimonious Coney shooting off his mouth on television all over the place.
Yeah, Comey's kind of losing. Let's be honest here.
No, he's a damn idiot, and he ought to pay for what he did.
Listen.
You know, I know you're frustrated. I'm frustrated as hell because nothing ever seems to happen to the other side. They get away with everything, and nothing ever happens.
You're right. And if you can call me back in a year from now and it's not settled and people haven't been held accountable, I would argue that we don't have a constitution anymore. I will argue with you that equal justice under the law is nonsense. It's non-existent. That there's a dual justice system, one for the elite, the powerful, and the rest for us. But I don't think we're going to end up in that place. And that's what I feel confident about. But I know there are decisions that are being made here that are being made factoring in much deeper things. I'm trying to tell you without giving away everything that I know and that I'm working on, okay? Anyway, a good call. I know a lot of you asking me about just a little more patience. Is moving faster than I even thought. That I can tell you. You know, what if you break down, God forbid, what if you break down on the road? What are you going to do? Do you have any protection? Do you have any assistance? Do you have any help? You know, you want to talk about a bad day, something that can be a horrible day? Well, you get a call from your boss asking you to work the weekend. That kind of sucks. Or, construction outside of the hotel that you were dying to go to. And a cloudy day at a beach when you were supposed to see sun. And then maybe a little work while you were there could just ruin somebody's weekend. Now, those are day ruiners, but what's even worse is if you need a big repair on your car, that's where carshield.com comes in. Now, if you have a big repair, okay, they're going to provide 24/7 roadside assistance free. They're going to give you a rental car free because this is the ultimate in extended vehicle protection. It doesn't matter if your car is new or has 155,000 miles on it. Well, guess what? If you need a new engine, the engine light comes on, you need a new tranny, something else happens, well, they're going to let you decide where do you want to get it fixed, the dealership or your favorite mechanic. You decide. If your car has that high mileage on it, you need to think about what happens if, God forbid, you break down on the road, and how do you pay for the big repair? That's what CarShield is all about. CarShield.com, 1-800-CAR-6000. If you mention my name, Hannity, you save 10%. All right, so protect yourself and your family on the road and the cost of really expensive repairs. CarShield.com, 1-800-CAR-6000, and you will not regret it. Promo code Hannity.
Uncovering evil and defending the truth. You're on the Sean Hannity Show.
Diabetes, high blood pressure, anxiety meds, everyone's on them. If you're a 50-year-old male, maybe a bit porky, and you may even have type 2 diabetes, $1 million of term insurance may only cost you about $200 a month. Call Term Provider. Speak with Big Lou at 800-568-2790. Big Lou will find a term life policy for you even if you have type 2 diabetes, are overweight, or have high blood pressure. Term Provider has helped thousands of people like you who think they can't afford term life insurance. To buy $1 million of affordable term life for you, all you need to do is call Big Lou at 800-568-2790. Lou will make sure the scales are tipped in your favor. Call 800-568-2790. Big Lou will answer your call and work to fit you into a term life policy that you can afford. Remember, Big Lou's like you. He's on meds too. Call 800-568-2790. 800-568-2790.
They've stormed beaches and freed countries. Protected the weak and defeated the strong. Shown courage and compassion. raised our flag and our hope. They've been called leathernecks. They've been called devil dogs. But above all, they're called Marines.
This is Nnamdi Asamoah. I play football for the Philadelphia Eagles, but what I do off the field with United Way might be more important. I'm a volunteer tutor and mentor. Why? Because over 1 million kids a year drop out of school, and that's not okay. It takes 12 years to create a graduate, but it takes about the same time to create a dropout. And the difference between a child becoming one or the other could be me, or it could be you. Studies show that if we get to these kids earlier, their chances are better. And kids who read well by 3rd grade are more likely to graduate. So join me in United Way. Suit up and take the pledge. Become a volunteer reader, tutor, or mentor. Because when a child succeeds, we all succeed. Give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Take the pledge at unitedway.org. Brought to you by United Way, the Ad Council, and the National Football League.
Steven.
Who said that?
Me, down here.
What are you, a yellow booger?
I'm a banana slug, Steven.
Well, what are you doing in my room?
I'm your sense of adventure. Don't you remember me? Don't you know that we miss you?
Miss me? Who misses me?
You know, all your friends in the forest. The trees, the pond, that little fort that you made out of branches. We all miss you.
Mom took me to the forest last year.
I'm a slug, Steven. It took me a long time to get here.
Oh, I guess that makes sense.
The forest is not that far away. Have an adventure today. I'm sure your mom would take you.
You're right. I should get out. I want to have fun. Play in puddles, catch frogs, and climb trees. Hey, Mom!
Yeah, hon? Steven, what is that in your hand?
It's my sense of adventure, Mom. It's telling me we need to get out of the house and have some fun in nature today.
Come to the forest where the more adventurous you lives. Check out discovertheforest.org for cool places nearby. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
At the American Lung Association, we're fighting for a day when we can all breathe easier. We're fighting for clear skies over every city and healthy lungs throughout the country. We're fighting to keep harmful secondhand smoke out of our public spaces and workplaces. And fighting to free millions of Americans from the addictive grip of tobacco and the devastating effects of lung disease. We're fighting for a day when kids no longer battle airborne poisons in their own homes or the fear of an asthma attack. The American Lung Association isn't just fighting for air, we're fighting for all the things that make it worth breathing, and we can use your help. Join us in the fight. Visit fightingforair.org and read about just a few of the many ways the American Lung Association is fighting to protect the air we breathe, both indoors and out. See what you can do at fightingforair.org.
That's going to wrap things up today. Full, complete coverage. Well, you know what? The predictable politicizing tragedy, it just, I don't even know where to begin, but we'll go through in great detail the things that are important and the things that are not important when it comes to national tragedy. If you can bludgeon Trump, pretty much it's all hands on deck, the most incendiary language possible. If you can't, we'll just ignore that part. And we'll explain. That's all coming up tonight, 9 Eastern, Hannity, Fox News, and all the latest information on the deep state. And we'll see you tonight, back here tomorrow. As always, thank you for being with us.
If you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business.
Meet Evan Goldberg, founder of NetSuite.
I had to learn that the hard way with my first company. That's why I started NetSuite. I needed to see everything that was going on with my business in one place, so we built the world's first cloud business system. And after 20 years, over 16,000 companies run their businesses on NetSuite. Everything you need to keep growing is in one place. financials, HR, commerce, customer info, and more. NetSuite gives you the visibility and control you need to make smart decisions and grow with confidence. That's why companies who use NetSuite grow 3 times faster than the S&P 500.
Find out the rest of Evan's story and get your free guide titled 7 Key Strategies to Grow Your Profits at netsuite.com/USA. That's netsuite.com/USA for your free guide, 7 Key Strategies to Grow Your Profits. Go right now to netsuite.com/USA. netsuite.com.
It's pretty clear that President Trump's least favorite city is Baltimore, Maryland. Mr. Trump lit into the city's congressman, Democratic Maryland Representative Elijah Cummings. But the president hasn't yet torched one of the city's most famous natives, Nancy D'Alessandro, as in House Speaker Nancy D'Alessandro Pelosi. Pelosi may represent San Francisco, another place for which the president has contempt, but Baltimore is quintessential Pelosi. Pelosi grew up in Baltimore's Little Italy neighborhood. After she became Speaker, Baltimore named a street after Pelosi via Nancy D'Alessandro. Pelosi's father, Thomas D'Alessandro Jr., and brother, Tommy D'Alessandro III, both served as mayors of Baltimore. Pelosi pulled no punches with the president, criticizing her hometown, noting she was just in Baltimore recently, saying the city is, quote, always a great source of pride. And then Pelosi fired this sidewinder at the president. Maybe you could ask his son-in-law, who is a slumlord. That's a reference to Jared Kushner. People have criticized Kushner over his rental properties in the Charm City. With the Speaker's Lobby, Chad Pergram, Fox News.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam. 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
So what do we do now? I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. That's the question on many lips following the weekend mass killings in Texas and in Ohio. After hearing chants of do something at a vigil in Dayton, Ohio's Governor Mike DeWine will today announce proposals for curtailing gun violence and improving mental health care. In his remarks to the country on Monday, the president denounced the shootings and called for action.
The president says after this weekend's 2 mass shootings, lawmakers, social media companies, and the entertainment industry should do more to prevent future acts of violence. He's also calling on Congress to implement so-called red flag laws.
We must make sure that those judged to pose a grave risk to public safety do not have access to firearms, and that if they do, those firearms can be taken through rapid due process.
The president did not endorse any sweeping new gun control laws.
Fox's Mark Meredith at a Hispanic voters conference in San Diego on Monday. Several of the Democrat presidential contenders tried to lay some of the blame for the shootings at the president's feet.
This is hatred, pure and simple, and it's being fueled by rhetoric that is so divisive and is causing people to die.
Former Vice President Joe Biden, despite calls for him to stay away, President Trump plans to visit El Paso and Dayton tomorrow. The youngest victim of the El Paso shootings, 15-year-old Javier Rodriguez, remembered in a vigil at his high school last night.
The events of this weekend have shown the worst and best part of people. In your memory, Javier, our community has shown great resilience despite the hurt, and it has shown our real identity, one of love and respect.
And at a prayer service in Dayton, Ohio, people laid flowers at the shooting scene, even placing some of them into the bullet holes left in the walls of the buildings. This is Fox News.
Fox Nation is the place for exclusive content you can't get anywhere else. New opinion shows from Laura Ingraham, Tucker Carlson, and Tommy Lahren you can only get by signing up for Fox Nation. Plus, the real stories behind the headlines. Documentaries on Chappaquiddick, Jimmy Hoffa, and more that you'll only find on Fox Nation. More of the opinion done right you crave? It's on Fox Nation. Documentaries and specials you can't get anywhere else? They're on Fox Nation. So go to foxnation.com today and sign up now for Fox Nation. Opinion done right now.
Shepard Smith. There's so many streams of information coming. Some are designed to distract you and to mislead you. When news is breaking, you have to slow down. We have to begin with what's most important. I'm here to find out what happened, to report it without fear or favor, in context and perspective, and to be honest, brutally honest about every bit of it. We work endless hours to make sure that when we deliver it to you as fact, it's a fact.
Shepard Smith on Fox News Channel. Real news, real honest opinion.
The trade war with China escalates again.
The Treasury Department has determined China is a currency manipulator. It means Secretary Steve Mnuchin will ask the International Monetary Fund to eliminate what the U.S. views as unfair competitive advantages by China. The designation from the U.S. came after China's central bank allowed its currency to hit its weakest level in decades, a response to new tariffs announced by President Trump. The president calls China's devaluation a major violation. U.S. stocks tumbled the Dow down nearly 800 points on the first day of trading this week, blamed on the U.S.-China trade war. In Washington, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
Despite the huge loss on Monday, Dow futures this morning are ahead by nearly 200 points. But there are new tensions with China. Beijing warning it will not stand idly by if the U.S. deploys intermediate-range missiles in the Indo-Pacific region and will take countermeasures if that happens. Defense Secretary Mark Esper said in Asia over the weekend he wants to deploy those mid-range conventional missiles within months. All of this as North Korea has mashed the launch button twice more.
A U.S. official says North Korea launched 2 short-range ballistic missiles from its west coast, which flew over the rogue nation before splashing down into the Sea of Japan. It's the 4th missile test in roughly 2 weeks. The test comes as U.S. and South Korean forces kick off joint military exercises. North Korea expressed its ire over the drills, saying it could be forced to take a, quote, new road, according to a statement by state media. At the Pentagon, Lucas Tomlinson, Fox News.
And how is Pyongyang paying for all this missile development? A United Nations report says by stealing as much as $2 billion from financial institutions through aggressive cyber attacks. American companies now banned from doing business with the government of Venezuela and disputed President Nicolas Maduro. President Trump Monday freezing all of the assets of the Maduro government in the U.S. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Fox on Film.
I'm Debbie Hanley. The first spin-off of the 18-year-old Fast and Furious franchise, Hobbs & Shaw, earned over $180 million in its worldwide debut, defeating a king. Hobbs & Shaw is a buddy movie that teams Dwayne Johnson's federal agent Luke Hobbs and mercenary Deckard Shaw, Jason Statham.
Look at you. I'm trying to save the world, which, for the record, will be my 4th time. Because I'm really good at it.
Hobbs & Shaw had a strong opening that dethroned The Lion King after a 2-week reign as number 1. Lion King is now in 2nd place.
Simba, you must remember who you are. The one true king.
Coming in 3rd, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Number 4 was Spider-Man Far From Home. That's Fox on Film.
From the most powerful city in the world, unconventional talk from a fresh, unconventional conservative. The Guy Benson Show.
It's Monday, August 5th, 2019. Welcome to the Guy Benson Show. I am Guy Benson, live in D.C. at our home studios. Thank you for being here. As you might imagine, today is not going to be a terribly fun show, given what happened in this country over the weekend. Back-to-back mass shootings, one in Texas, one in Ohio, leaving at least 31 people dead. The death toll in Texas has climbed today from 20 to 22, with some of the wounded people succumbing to their injuries. Joining me later in the program will be Andy McCarthy, Britt Hume, and Jessica Tarloff to talk about this and other issues. We will also play the entire speech from the president this morning at the White House later in the show, probably in the 5 p.m. hour. Many of you were likely at work when he spoke. We will bring you all of his remarks as he addressed a grieving nation from the White House, flanked by the vice president. I do want to play for you a few cuts of what the president said this morning, including in cut 4, a very explicit denunciation of white supremacy.
In one voice, our nation must condemn racism, bigotry, and white supremacy. These sinister ideologies must be defeated. Hate has no place in America. Hatred warps the mind, ravages the heart, and devours the soul. We have asked the FBI to identify all further resources They need to investigate and disrupt hate crimes and domestic terrorism, whatever they need.
White supremacy and domestic terrorism. That's exactly right. It's important for us to use words that are accurate. And in the case of El Paso, as was the case last weekend in California, in Gilroy, we mentioned that on the show last week, yet another weekend of violence. Young white men, in those two cases, white supremacists, fueled by hate, went out seeking to kill people with brown skin. The killer in Texas apparently told authorities that his goal was to kill as many Mexicans as he could. As he is being interrogated, reports have emerged, and the police say he has shown absolutely no remorse. The killer in Texas leaving behind a manifesto laced with xenophobic and racist rhetoric, anti-immigrant sentiment. It is ugly, dark stuff. And he did, in fact, it must be said, use some terms that have been used by political leaders, including the president. Now, I do not blame the president, as many people are rushing to do, just like I do not blame, for example, Elizabeth Warren for what happened in Dayton, Ohio. That shooting is very different. Some of the fact patterns are horrifyingly similar. Young, white male, deeply disturbed, angry online, something of a history of distressing behavior. But he was a self-described leftist, supporter of Elizabeth Warren, socialist, Satanist. I read through his Twitter feed, not going to mention his name. And he had a lot of retweets and sharing of content that was sort of exulting in or fantasizing about the deaths of political opponents, namely people on the right. The guy down in Texas drove many hours to a border community to kill Hispanic people. He was a right-winger and a white supremacist, although he also had this, if you read his manifesto, which I don't recommend. I don't think that we need to give this person and his rantings any more attention. He did talk about his pressing environmentalist concerns and human overpopulation. I'll get into the blame game later in the show. I hate it. The partisan blame game. And I will address that in due time. But, I mean, it is just... So on Saturday, I had a bunch of people over to the house. We hosted a barbecue, a lot of my colleagues from Town Hall, some from Fox as well. By that point, the El Paso massacre had already happened. And I made a decision, all right, I've got company over. I'm the host. I'm going to basically put my phone away and not dwell on this right now, because I didn't want to bring down the entire evening. But then, by the time people took off and the house was clearing out, before I went to bed, I had Fox News Sunday the next morning, so I was just catching up on more of the details. And you just have this sick feeling in the pit of your stomach, reading about the details of what happened and particularly why. It's impossible to ignore that there are these metastasizing cancers among elements of the alt-right, and then sometimes the alt-left as well, of people feeling, I guess, isolated and angry. I'm sure there are mental illness components and elements of this as well, where there's then this impulse to go out and murder and maim other people as a manifestation of that anger. And it's just evil. So I went to sleep feeling pretty lousy on Saturday night, as did I think many Americans. I woke up on Sunday, just checked my phone to make sure I hadn't missed anything all that big in terms of updates, and I was a little bit disoriented because there were these updates about Dayton. I was like, wait, what's happening here? And it took me a second to put it together. There had been another one. 9 people killed. A little after, I believe, 1 in the morning local time. People outside in a busy street in that city in Ohio. just reveling on a weekend night, trying to have fun, and this guy shows up in body armor with a high-powered rifle, just like the guy in El Paso. All sorts of magazines, and I think the police said today he had 250 rounds on his person. And he managed to shoot dozens of people, killing 9 of them, before he was shot dead by police within less than a minute. 2 of these things, back to back. There's some sort of contagion here in our society, and there's no easy answer to it. There are a lot of people who want to come out and immediately frame this with their issue du jour, or their pet issue, right? It's about rhetoric. It's about guns. It's about mental illness. It's about video games. People are searching, I think, for tropes or themes that are easy for them to sort of put into a box that allows them to, I guess, not have to think about how complex the issue actually is. But there aren't easy solutions here. And some of the better commentary that I've read has been delving into the contours of that gray, rather than the black and white of, okay, now it's time for more gun control, or now it's time to blame the rhetoric of that politician, because that's what's easy for us. That's what makes us maybe make sense of things and feel better. Doesn't do a damn thing in terms of helping. I'm not sure if the goal necessarily is to help. And I understand, like, human beings try to process unimaginable things in ways that are imperfect and flawed. President, again at the White House today, talking about the need for bipartisan solutions. He says this has been a rising tide. Listen to cut 6. This is the president acknowledging what I think is real for many Americans. Even as gun crime has plummeted overall and the gun ownership rate, or the number of guns owned in America, has exploded, right? There's this counterintuitive phenomenon. Many more guns now owned in this country, significantly less violent crime and murders overall than in previous decades. 70s, 80s, 90s. We are well below those highs in spite of the guns. And yet, these types of mass casualty shootings do seem to be increasing. And they are. I mean, 2015 and beyond in particular. President talking about that, cut 6.
In the 2 decades since Columbine, our nation has watched with rising horror and dread as one mass shooting has followed another, over and over again, decade after decade. We cannot allow ourselves to feel powerless. We can and will stop this evil contagion. In that task, we must honor the sacred memory of those we have lost by acting as one people.
He then went on in cut 7 to talk about seeking real solutions. And again, a lot of this sounds good. And this is not a criticism of him, but I think it's a lot easier said than done. Listen.
Open wounds cannot heal if we are divided. We must seek real bipartisan solutions. We have to do that in a bipartisan manner that will truly make America safer and better for all. First, we must do a better job of identifying and acting on early warning signs. I am directing the Department of Justice to work in partisan partnership with local, state, and federal agencies, as well as social media companies, to develop tools that can detect mass shooters before they strike.
Detecting mass shooters before they strike. That is an awfully difficult task. Now, look, there are warning signs in many cases. You think of the Parkland example and that shooting in the high school. The number of red flags about that kid, a recent graduate, they were everywhere. Some had been ignored or never followed through upon by authorities. You've had other red flags where people were, in fact, identified as people who should not be able to buy guns, who nevertheless were able to do so legally because the government system failed and screwed up. Hopefully the Fix NICS bill that passed last year will address some of those concerns. There was local news reporting about the Dayton shooter in Ohio, who is a white kid, 24 years old. He's the leftist one. He reportedly was expelled from his high school because they found a list of people he wanted to murder and rape and remove their skin. I mean, there's a red flag. I think he eventually was forced to apologize, and I believe the reporting said they let him back into the school. But that is an early warning sign of someone who is deeply disturbed. Now, that was years ago, and this murder spree didn't happen until his early to mid-20s. Even if we can develop a pattern of some of these early warning signs and understand how they work, I think there needs to be a lot more research into that. Then what? Right there, in my mind at least, there are significant civil liberties concerns, First and Second Amendment concerns. But as long as this is a growing, even if it's a small cancer, it's a small cancer that does a lot of damage. I said on Fox News Sunday, on Sunday morning, with Chris Wallace, we must name the problem. And in many of these cases, not all, certainly in El Paso, the problem is white terrorism, white supremacy, and its resulting violence. I think we can name the problem without naming the people. I've said it on this show, and that will be still and continue to be a policy here. We're not going to talk about their names. I wish news networks would give a very brief report about the identity of these suspects or killers and then never mention them by name again. And do not put their faces in the newspaper or on the TV. There is evidence that there is a copycat effect and these people want glory. What they deserve is exactly the opposite. What they deserve is relative anonymity and disgrace because they're demented losers. That's a small thing that the media can do, but it actually has some basis to it and could mitigate some of the problem. But you're not going to be able to just snap your fingers and solve things. Not with gun control. They're talking about background checks again. A lot of the early evidence suggests the background checks were passed. Not sure it would have prevented anything here. We can talk about everyone calming down their rhetoric. We can talk about federal authorities looking at internet chat rooms more carefully. Right? There's some calls for video games. I think it's ridiculous. Ban certain video games? Come on. People are looking for easy solutions, and the truth is there aren't any. Which doesn't mean we should just throw up our hands and do nothing, but we have to be realistic and thoughtful. We're up on a break here. Tough day. Our hearts go out to everyone affected by this in Texas and Ohio. And we'll do our best to sort through things in a responsible way. It's the Guy Benson Show.
The Guy Benson Show.
Hi, I'm Johnny Bench for Blue Emu. Every pain relief product claims their new ingredient will help, but Blue Emu is the #1 emu oil brand every year for a reason. Don't trust hype, trust consistency. Choose Blue Emu. It works fast, and you won't stink.
Youth vaping is a serious problem. One issue, minors may try to purchase vapor products online. That's why Juul Labs is enhancing age verification on our website. Customers must provide personal information or scan a valid ID with a real-time selfie and are verified by a third party to ensure the purchaser is 21 or over. Learn more about Juul Labs' efforts to combat youth vaping at juul.com/youth-prevention. Juul Labs, for adult smokers only. Paid for by Juul Labs.
Ever wanted to speak another language? Babbel can get you confidently speaking Spanish, French, or German within weeks.
I just started learning Spanish with Babbel, and it's really helping my pronunciation.
¿Cómo te llamas?
¿Cómo te llamas? Haha, I got it. I wish I had tried Babbel sooner.
See why Babbel is the quick way to get conversational in a new language. Go to Babbel.com or download the app and try it for free. That's Babbel, BABBEL.com to try for free.
The backyard's looking great, Rob.
Thanks, man. I was planning on adding a deck, too. Know any good contractors?
Why don't you just ask Home Advisor?
Home what?
HomeAdvisor.com. You just tell them about your project and they match you with local pros that can do the job.
Nice. Now, how much does it cost?
Oh, Home Advisor's totally free to use. Plus, you can read customer reviews, check pricing, and book appointments for free.
What's the website again?
HomeAdvisor.com. Or just download the free Home Advisor app.
Home Advisor. Hall of Fame catcher Johnny Bench for Blue Emu. I used to hit dingers and throw lasers. I had a long and healthy career in baseball. Blue Emu helps me keep my muscles and joints healthy so I can keep playing off the field now. Try Blue Emu today. It works fast and you won't stink.
Go Caleb! Come on, hit a homer, Jesse.
Let's go, guys.
Hey, did you guys know that kids who play sports earn more money when they grow up?
Of course. I knew that.
Hey, did you guys know that kids who read books have a bigger vocabulary?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Wow, jinx. Did you guys know that friendly children have more friends?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
That's true. I knew that. Did you guys know that winter babies are better at music?
Everyone knows that.
Oh, yeah?
It's pretty obvious.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
obvious.
Oh, hey, guys, did you know that most people think they're using the right car seat for their kid, but they're not?
Huh, didn't know that.
I'm pretty sure I knew that. I'm pretty sure you didn't.
Parents who really know it all know for sure that their child is in the right car seat at the right age and size. Visit safercar.gov/the right seat to make sure your child is protected. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
The Dean's List with Janice Dean.
A man who graduated with a nursing degree from the same school he began as a janitor makes today's Dean's List. Frank Baez, who moved to New York from the Dominican Republic with his family, was just a teenager when he started working at New York University's Langone Hospital. While working with the nurses, he said he realized he wanted to be one of them. He learned how much they advocate for their patients and the passion they have for their job. Frank was encouraged by the nurses he worked with to apply to the nursing program. He graduated with a 3.6 GPA. He's also the first person in his family to graduate from college. Frank says he could barely speak English at the time that he started working at NYU, and now he says he feels very proud of how much he accomplished.
If you work hard, you have discipline, and you want something, you should always go for it. Never give up on your dream.
Congratulations, Frank. You are a wonderful example of living the American dream. Janice Dean, Fox News.
You've heard me talk all about the Mega Life and Health Insurance Company. We're the specialists when it comes to providing affordable health insurance to those of us that are self-employed or run a small business. But have you called us yet? Maybe you haven't needed health insurance. Maybe you had it where you work, but now you're off on your own. You started your own business, and now you realize how challenging it is to find affordable health insurance. Well, you can count on the Mega Life and Health Insurance Company to provide affordable health insurance to folks just like you and I, small business owners and the self-employed. Call right now and get yourself an affordable quote. The call is free. Here's the number: 866-500-MEGA. 866-500-MEGA. Toll free, 866-500-MEGA. For affordable health insurance, call now. Home Office, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Association membership requirements vary by state. Not available in all states.
Guy Benson, live from D.C. Thank you for listening. Fox News alert on another story that we are following. The Dow is down more than 800 points at this hour in the final 35 minutes or so of trading on the day. Trade war fears escalating with some of the president's rhetoric about China and the negotiations there. Are there concerns about the economy? Maybe we'll get into that with Britt Hume coming up a bit later on. In the previous segment, we were talking about solutions and facile so-called solutions being offered by public officials. I'm going to get into guns and gun control later on. Suffice it to say that I'm skeptical. whether or not those would be effective, the measures being discussed. And I really have a problem with a lot of the blame going on, both on guns and rhetoric. We will address that. I did mention the video games side of this. I'm not a gamer. In fact, we had a segment, I think, last week on the show about video games. I talked about how I've never really played them. But to hear not just the president, but on Fox News Channel over the weekend, Kevin McCarthy, the Republican leader in the House, Dan Patrick, the lieutenant governor of Texas, a Republican, seems like there's a congealing talking point about violent video games somehow having a role here. That just strikes me as people lashing out, trying to find something to latch onto.